I need it. I need it. Let's go. God.
All right, welcome to the Young Turks. Cenk Anna Kasparian with you guys. Anna's in New York again because she's going to be on CNN again. Check that out tonight at 10 o'clock Eastern. You doing tomorrow night at 10 o'clock Eastern too, or no?
I'm coming home. I'm coming home tomorrow. I'll be on the show tomorrow, just as I am today. And one of the panel members on Abby Phillips' show today is going to be Jeffrey Toobin. So,
all right,
it'll be fun.
Tugging the Toobin is going to want to watch for a couple of different reasons. So that is one of our members. All right, so big show ahead for you guys. Trump versus the courts, and Stephen Miller is all irate about everything in the world. But super interesting, we got the flotilla coming up, we got the peace deal coming up. And on the peace deal, I have a prediction, an official prediction. So ought to be interesting. But let's get started. Casper, what do you got?
You gotta let me give you the deets before you make your prediction, Uger. You promise?
Yeah, I promise.
Okay, all right. Okay, well, let's start off with something a little different, which is Trump's war on Americans, it appears, because, well, you're about to find out.
The Trump administration activated a third state's National Guard. Texas Governor Greg Abbott issued a statement saying he, quote, fully authorized the president to call up 400 members of the Texas National Guard. The plan is to send them to Oregon and also to Chicago, where the situation is growing more tense by the hour. Federal agents threw tear gas at protesters over the weekend.
Yeah, it's a political loser, John. It's a political loser. Donald Trump may think it's a political winner, but it's a political loser. Oppose Trump deploying in a US city. Active duty US military, 61%. The National Guard in particular, 58%. When you get 3 in 5 Americans agreeing on anything, you know if that is on the opposition side, it's a political loser.
It's certainly not shocking that sending federal agents to terrorize American citizens in Democrat-run cities is a political loser. But nonetheless, I want to give you the details on what's currently transpiring and how the federal courts are weighing in on Trump's actions. So for the second time in one weekend, a Trump-appointed federal judge in the state of Oregon has blocked the president's plans to send National Guard troops to Portland. Now, the decision blocks the deployment of National Guard from anywhere in the United States to Oregon's largest city. Now, on Sunday night, the US district judge who's at the heart of this story, Judge Karen Immergut, had to essentially expand on a more narrow ruling that she had issued just the day before that blocked Trump from sending in members of the Oregon State National Guard into Portland. Now, after that, and in an effort to essentially get around the federal judge's ruling, Trump reassigned federalized guard troops from Los Angeles to go to Portland instead. About 100 California National Guardsmen arrived in Oregon early Sunday morning, and that deployment was expected to double by the end of the day before the judge stepped in once again. Now, during the Sunday hearing, the judge expressed frustration with the DOJ's lawyer, that's Deputy Assistant Attorney General Eric Hamilton, for what she characterized as an attempt to sidestep her order from the night before, from Saturday. So in court, Judge Immergut told Hamilton, quote, "Mr. Hamilton, you are an officer of the court. Aren't the defendants simply circumventing my order?" And here's more of what she had to say. Take a look.
Judge Karen Immergat, a Trump appointee, issued a new, broader order prohibiting the administration from using federal control to send any state's National Guard into Oregon and pressing the government's attorney, saying, quote, "You are an officer of the court. Do you believe that this is an appropriate way to deal with my order or an order that a judge issues that you disagree with, or is that an appropriate mechanism to appeal as you have done?" Over the weekend, federal officers clashed with demonstrators at the ICE headquarters in Portland, firing pepper balls and flashbangs. Portland police say they did not observe any person or property crimes committed and no arrests were made.
Now, just a few more details before I go to you, Cenk, because the judge noted the Saturday order blocking Oregon National Guard troops from being sent to Portland relied on her finding that the president appeared to have exceeded his constitutional authority by federalizing the troops because protests in Portland, quote, "did not pose a danger of rebellion," end quote. And that conditions in Portland had not changed when the Trump administration moved to mobilize members of the California National Guard to the city instead, Immergat said. So she feels that Trump has gone beyond his authority. And on top of that, Cenk, she argues that the justifications coming from the Trump administration in terms of sending federalized National Guardsmen to Portland really didn't make much sense. And I'll get to why in just a moment, but first I want to hear from you.
Yeah, so the most important question here is it constitutional or not, right? So if, well, look, I think that a lot of us are uncomfortable with seeing the military in our streets. It feels like a developing nation that is unstable and makes you feel like you're being watched at all times by military occupation. It doesn't feel American, but is it constitutional? And the Stephen Miller side and the Trump side says, sure, I mean, we could use National Guard. And the presidents have used National Guard before. So then you get into the nitty gritty, not Diddy, details of, okay, yeah, but how do you decide? So, and the judge lays out the correct process there. And Anna just told you. So the question here is, if you're gonna use the National Guard, especially without the permission of the governor, are we in danger of a rebellion? Like there's gonna be a rebellion in Portland and it's gonna topple the United States government. So we gotta rush our troops over there so the rebellion doesn't topple, not just like the aldermen of Portland or the city council, but the United States of America. Come on, guys. Does anyone believe we're in danger of a rebellion that's gonna topple? Because if we are, it ain't in Portland. So no, he's obviously picking Portland and Chicago as places that are run by Democrats, and he thinks that there's crime there. But really, crime has gone down in those places. If he'd done it like 2-3 years ago, we would have accurately told you, yeah, crime is up, but that doesn't mean that there's a rebellion going on. Even back then, was there a rebellion against the US? No, there's even less crime now. How could crime in a city that has gone down significantly be some sort of rebellion if it wasn't before? None of that makes any sense. Obviously, it's not a rebellion. Obviously, you shouldn't have the troops in the streets. Here, the Trump-appointed judge is absolutely correct.
You're right, Cenk. So Trump or the Trump administration in their defense had claimed that sending the federalized troops to Oregon was meant to control protests at an ICE facility. Now, there are in fact protests in front of an ICE facility. There's no indication though that the local police and local authorities are standing down and allowing absolute anarchy to ensue. And the claim made by the Trump administration in their justification was disputed, not just by state and local leaders, but also including by the judge, again, a Trump appointed judge herself. Take a look.
But the Trump administration insists violent criminals are destroying Portland and troops are necessary to protect federal assets and personnel. In a ruling Saturday, the judge wrote Portland's protests were not significantly violent or disruptive, and that Trump's description of them was simply untethered to the facts, that deploying the Oregon National Guard likely exceeded his constitutional authority.
Well, news is now breaking. This literally just broke right now. So apologies if I get anything even a little bit incorrect here. I'm actually going to read verbatim from The Hill, which is reporting this. President Trump on Monday said he was considering invoking, get a load of this, the Insurrection Act to justify sending federal troops into Portland. I just want to be very clear here. We're talking about the president of the United States essentially going to war against the American people. Because if this was really about rooting out crime or helping individuals living in these big, Democrat-run cities, he would work with local officials in order to root out whatever problem he purports is, menacing the people living in Oregon. But that's not what's happening here. He clearly enjoys seeing, a federalized presence in these blue cities, I believe is a form of retaliation, because let's keep it 100, everyone. Let's just keep it 100. Okay, what crime other than murder is worse than rape, including the rape of minors? And I still have yet to hear a single word uttered by anyone in the Trump administration in regard to an Israeli government official who got caught by our own FBI attempting to have sex with a minor in Las Vegas. He was free to fly back to Israel. And what, you care about crime? You don't care about crime. Let's just keep it 100. This is all about retaliating against political opponents, including American voters who did not cast their ballots for Trump. That's what this is about. Trump, in remarks from the Oval Office, likened the situation in Portland to an insurrection. That's rich. Though he said he had yet to make a decision on invoking the Insurrection Act. Back to you, Cenk.
Yeah, so this is why I say our audience, smartest audience in the world. So Arkansas Jack, who's a member on TYT.com, wrote in even before that news broke, Trump wants an insurrection so he can call martial law. That way he can cancel the midterm election. So look, I don't know if he's going to try to cancel the midterm election, although, I mean, the way his popularity is going, I wouldn't be surprised if he got to desperate measures by the end, and then we're going to have a very, very, very serious constitutional issue about, and maybe even an existential issue about America. So if he goes in that direction. But in terms of the martial law, he's been antsy to do it for the entire time that he's been in office, including the first term. He's constantly talking about rolling out the troops. So in fact, the judge referenced quotes of his from a dozen years ago. For a dozen years, he's been saying the same thing. Oh my God, crime in Chicago is out of control. It's a disaster. It's the worst thing in the world. America's gonna collapse. Well, it's been a dozen years and America hasn't collapsed. There has been no rebellion against the United States government, at least from Chicago or Portland. There was one on January 6th, but okay, we'll put that aside because everybody gets super emotional about it. Oh my God, I'm triggered. I saw it with my own eyes. They were bum rushing the Capitol. That doesn't count. But rando crime in Portland counts as an insurrection? No one in their right mind could possibly believe that. Judge put it well, it is untethered from the facts. So, but this guy, Trump, has had a hard on for bringing military into the streets and having total military control over the American people. And you know how he feels about being criticized or joked about. He despises it. And he thinks the FCC should take action. Now he's calling on FCC to cancel Al Sharpton, for the guy who ran on freedom of speech, right? So I don't want the military in the streets. I don't want government tyranny all over America. And that is what Trump has been promising for the last 10 years, and I'm sick of it. And so he's looking for any excuse here, and that leads to what Pritzker said. And surprisingly, that was also interesting and smart. And so he said, look, and this is, a lot of you will instantly go, yeah, of course. Trump is trying to bring in the troops to create the emergency in the first place. The emergency doesn't exist right now. Oh, there's crime in Chicago. And how is that different than the last 10 years, 20 years, 30 years? You say, okay, I want it to get better. The Marines can't do policing. The National Guard can't do policing. So if you want to send in other federal agencies with the cooperation of Chicago and Illinois to bring down crime, great, nobody's objecting to that, right? But you're sending in troops there, and the reality is you want people to react to the troops So you could say, oh my God, oh, they hit the troops, oh my God, that's it, we have to crush them, roll out the tanks. And then right-wingers, if you're not gonna be in favor of government tyranny and literally jackbooted thugs coming in here and taking over our cities, by the way, Palantir's next. Oracle is bragging about how they can now make all the citizens be good little boys and girls because they're gonna be able to track all of you. Isn't that what you were worried about? They're coming in through the front door.
That's exactly right. That's Larry Ellison just openly and brazenly making those comments about mass government surveillance on the American people. So for those who are still in this brain dead delusion that everything that's happening in this country is left versus right, please get yourself out of that headspace because it's incorrect. It's ordinary American people against a power-hungry government. And what we're seeing right now is terrifying, not just in regard to what's going down in these big blue cities, but also in regard to what the Trump administration is plotting alongside these tech companies who are seeking to increase their power as well as increase their surveillance on the American people. One other thing that I just wanted to note is that if the Republican Party is under any impression that Trump's actions are politically popular and will help Republican candidates in the midterm elections, well, they've got another thing coming. Let's go to our friend, Harry Enton.
Oppose Trump deploying in a U.S. city, active duty U.S. military, 61%. The National Guard in particular, 58%. When you get 3 in 5 Americans agreeing on anything, you know if that is on the opposition side, it's a political loser. And among independents, who are, of course, that key block in the middle of the United States political electorate, we're talking about 2/3 of independents there and about who oppose the deployment of either active duty U.S. military or National Guard. I think it's that they don't buy Donald Trump's case for why these troops must go into the U.S. cities. So the New York Times essentially gave you a two-pronged little answer here, right? Trump may use the National Guard to intimidate rivals, or big city crime will spiral out of control if the troops don't go into cities. What you see here is the majority that takes the case is that Trump may use the National Guard to intimidate political rivals at 51%. Just 42% of Americans agree with the Donald Trump stance that, in fact, big city crime will spiral out of control if the National Guard doesn't go into U.S. cities.
The final thing for me is this reality of what's happening on the ground in Portland, because if you hear from Trump administration officials, they would have you believe that local authorities, the people who are actually tasked constitutionally to maintain public order, haven't actually been doing their jobs. They've been standing down, but that's not true. So I want to go to graphic 6 here, where 2 people were arrested by the Portland Police Bureau overnight. The department said, bringing its total arrest count outside the building, meaning the ICE facility where protests are happening, to 36 since nightly protests began in June. That figure does not include arrests made by federal law enforcement agents. So no one is standing down. For those who are committing crimes or engaging in violence as opposed to peaceful protest, they are being met by local authorities who are arresting them, as they should. So the deployment of federalized guardsmen is really, again, about menacing these communities and retaliating against who Trump sees as his political opponents. So final word from you, Cenk?
Yeah, so you talk about left and right, and we are entering a new paradigm, and I want to start doing something on Wednesday that tries to unite the country. God help us all. But for the old guard, the people who are dug in on the ends of the left and right spectrum, in between 2019 and 2023, we tried to explain to folks that crime was going up. You know why? Because that's what the data showed. And the left wing was untethered from the facts. It said, no, crime is not going up. Numbers are lies, right? Now we have the right wing saying between 23 and 25 that crime is spiraling out of control, when in the real data shows the crime is going down. And in a lot of areas, significantly down. 29% down, homicides are down in Chicago, 13% overall. Philadelphia's numbers are down. LA, New York down, right? So, but now the right goes, no, now I don't want to see reality. I choose to be blind, and I'm going to see the numbers going down and say they're going up, okay? So both sides, for political reasons, go, no, I don't want to hear the facts. I want to be untethered from the facts. Well, if you want to be, you can be, right? And then you'll see whatever you want to see. But right now, crime is going down, and we're the guys who told you that it was going up when it was, and the entire left told you it wasn't, okay? So we've earned that credibility because we actually care about the facts. And right now, bringing in the National Guard or anyone else into these cities when crime is going down is mental. There's no rebellion against America. It's obviously Trump's, some sort of lizard brain instinct of must have military in the streets. He's wanted it from day one. Was there an emergency back in 2016, 2018? We can go on and on. So back to it, last thing is the Oracle. So Larry Ellison did give this quote. We had it on the show last week. And they are using Gaza as kind of a training ground to figure out how they can monitor every single citizen and make them behave, okay? Then they're gonna bring it to America. So Ellison, one of the richest men in the world, the owner of Oracle and the biggest donator to the IDF, he literally gives charitable donations to an army in the middle of a genocide. He wrote, quote, or said, citizens will be on their best behavior because we're constantly recording and reporting everything that's going on.
That man is a traitor to this country. Being the largest donor to a foreign military is suspect, to say the least, but just want to make that point.
I mean, look, traitor is just a lingo word. We don't mean it literally, and the courts can decide whatever they want if these issues ever go to the courts, but they won't. But what I do care about is, guys, they're saying they want to bring that here. If you're on the left or the right, you should hate that idea. So, beware of the establishment bearing gifts. It ain't a gift. It's a Trojan horse.
All right, we got to take a break, but when we come back, we'll give you an update on the ceasefire deal that President Trump is attempting to get basically agreed to by, honestly, at this point, Netanyahu. I'll give you all the details on that story and more when we come back.
Back on TOT, let's go to Super Chat, read these blind. Gargoyle Dragon says, question, who's responsible for ICE violence? Will they be charged individually or should we just frog march Tom Not So Human Homan and ICE Barbie in front of the courts? So look, the reality is that no one's going to be held accountable. 3 years from now, you would have to have a Democrat win and then go backwards and say Homan and Noam overstepped. So I don't know a Democrat on planet Earth that would do that, but I'm not even sure that they should. Are they trying to start extra violence to create a facade of an emergency, to send in more troops and have the federal government seize more control in different states, which by the way is an anathema to the 10th Amendment in the US Constitution, and the states' rights that conservatives said that they loved? Yeah, it's definitely the exact opposite of what conservatives said that they wanted. And yes, it's a problem, and yes, they're agitating, right? Whether they'll be held accountable is a different story and a bit of a dream. My job's to be real with you guys. Anthony McClendon writes, hi guys, in 2010 you did a story about a homeless man who was trained as a broadcast announcer. Addiction cost him his career, home and family. Someone helped him get clean and get a new job. Watching it will bring you joy. Tony, thanks for writing in about that. I do remember that story. We've had some epic stories here. I was remembering Phil Davison the other day. I'm gonna bring that guy back and make him famous again one more time, but in a little bit. So I love that you're going back and watching old episodes. Good news, we've got a lot of them on YouTube. And if you remember, which Tony is, on TYT.com. Carol Gosh writes, and I live in PA and Philly was on the list. However, Fetterman voted with the Republicans, surprise, to keep the government open. Now we are off the list. So if Fetterman did that for Philly, hey, it's a slight upside for Fetterman. That's the first time I've heard of a slight upside for Fetterman in a long, long time. Fairest man in America. All right, Richard Flowers says, by the way, I don't know that I would have voted with the Republicans to get that upside, but I'm just saying. All right, Richard Flowers writes in, release the damn Epstein files. It's all distractions. It's the same reason why Johnson won't swear in the new Congress member. She's signature 218. Richard, that is inarguable. And no real person on the left or right would argue with you. The only people who would argue with you is, in this case, not even the Democrats, just the phony Republicans. And I mean, look, mainstream media cracks me up, man. Like, obviously they're not sitting Representative Grijalva because she's the 218th vote. That's the most obvious thing in the world. And even everybody on the right online agrees with that. Mainstream media's like, I don't know. I won't say Epstein. I won't say Epstein. I don't know. I don't know why. Okay, Mark Francis 076 says, what happens when Trump doesn't listen to the courts? Well, that's crossing the Rubicon, and that would be a massive problem. And we would have significant issues, and I don't know how they would be resolved. Kevin Shea says, I have a tough time watching Bill Maher these days. He's so pro-Israel. Bill Maher's pretty good on a bunch of issues. When he gets to Israel, he's so maniacal, so pro-genocide, so blind, so biased. It's impossible not to have strong feelings of disgust about it. Anyway, Eddie Jameson says, couldn't think of a better way to spend my birthday than right here with Cenk, Anna, and the TYT community. Us too, brother. Thank you, Eddie, and happy birthday. All right, back on TYT, Cenk, Anna, and two last names. They just joined by hitting the join button below on YouTube. I love our YouTube community. I was just reading comments during the social break to all you guys from YouTube members, and YouTube members do an amazing job of sustaining us. So if you can help out, hit the join button below. And I'm gonna start teasing it now. On Wednesday, we're gonna start to do something different and interesting. And here we go again. It's an idea that I've got that's wild, not likely to work, but full of hope. Okay, Casper, what's next?
All right, well, let's talk a little bit about the updates on this potential ceasefire deal between Hamas and Israel. So, Hamas has officially agreed to release all hostages in exchange for a permanent ceasefire. They made this statement last week on Friday, which was basically the main thrust of the ceasefire deal that President Trump brokered. Now, they are also wanting to negotiate some of the other terms in the deal. And according to Axios, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu essentially wants the United States and Israel to spin this as Hamas outright rejecting Trump's peace plan. Now, of course, that's not the case. But this is repetition coming from the Israelis because this is exactly what they've done with every single ceasefire negotiation. Now, Trump allegedly wasn't too happy about what he was hearing from Benjamin Netanyahu, the prime minister of Israel. But honestly, don't hold your breath because we have been here before. So the report was published by Israeli journalist and former IDF soldier Barak Ravid. Two anonymous US officials also allegedly confirmed the report. Now, the report claims that Trump feared Hamas would outright reject his peace plan, and this is probably why. Take a look.
The administration, President Trump, briefed Arab leaders at the end of last week on this plan. They said, well, there are a number of things that are good with this. And then Trump met with Netanyahu and Ron Dermer, who is one of these forces of right-wing extremism in Israel. And he's an American-born advisor to Netanyahu, who was Israel's ambassador to the United States for a long time. He knows how to pull strings of American politicians, wherever those strings and however they arise. And they changed the plan as they met and basically rewrote key parts of what Trump had told the Arabs to say, oh, yes, and we should remember that Israel will remain in control over Gaza. They changed what they had actually briefed the leaders and then unilaterally announced something different. And this is just now being disclosed in recent hours. This is so typical.
So to reiterate, Trump goes to Arab leaders, shows them the initial peace plan. They say there's some really great things in here. We approve. Then the Trump administration meets with the Israelis. The Israelis unilaterally change the terms of the peace deal. And then they, of course, don't disclose that to the public. And so they set Hamas up to reject the deal. And miraculously, Hamas didn't reject the deal. Now, what did the revised version of the peace deal include? You're about to hear Jeffrey Sachs give you the details on that.
The way that this agreement is written is that Israel keeps its security control over Gaza. In other words, Gaza remains under Israel's dominance, which is Netanyahu's whole point.
Here's Prime Minister Netanyahu speaking in Hebrew immediately upon his return from Washington to Tel Aviv.
Everyone kept saying you have to accept Hamas's terms to withdraw everyone. The IDF needs to withdraw and Hamas can recover and also rehabilitate the strip. No way, that's not happening. On the contrary. And President Trump added that if Hamas refuses, he will give Israel full backing to complete the military operation to eliminate it.
So when it comes to Hamas accepting the deal, they accept the main, the main thrust of the deal, essentially. We will release every single hostage for a permanent ceasefire. But the finer points, meaning the removal of IDF forces from the Gaza Strip, that is what Hamas wants to continue negotiating for obvious reasons. Now, nonetheless, it turns out Trump is actually elated over the fact that Hamas has accepted the peace deal. And so even though he's excited, Netanyahu obviously feels differently. You would think he would want the hostages back, but that's never been the case. So we've learned that apparently Trump learned that Netanyahu was against it when he called him and found out that the prime minister doesn't share his optimism. Bibi told Trump, this is nothing to celebrate and that it doesn't mean anything. And Trump responded allegedly with, I don't know why you're always so effing negative. This is a win. Take it. Now, I've got more details for you, Cenk, but I'm curious what you think about where this whole peace deal stands.
Yeah, so I now have a pretty good idea of where I think it's gonna go. So Israel has never wanted the hostages back. They might have wanted some of them back, but they certainly didn't want all of them back because then they wouldn't have an excuse to keep going in Gaza. So they thought, right? So Trump, on the other hand, actually does want a peace deal. He cares about the Nobel Peace Prize and he ran on anti-war. Good. I'll take it. Okay, so, and I don't think he's faking it. So will he eventually serve Israel? He almost always does. But I think on top of that, he actually does want a peace deal. So Netanyahu sets it up in a way that he thinks, well, Hamas can't possibly take it, but they wind up taking it anyway. Then he tries to add more provisions, try to kill it, say yes, but. That Hamas is saying yes, but, and that it's not really an acceptance, etc. He tries everything. He throws a kitchen sink at Trump and Trump goes, no, I like it. They said yes, we're gonna go forward. So my guess is what happened next is Israel realized, well, we can't fight Trump on this, so let's pretend to accept. So they went back to, okay, yes, sir, of course, sir. But then he goes back and tells his home audience, as you saw there, in Hebrew, that is very important. So he doesn't want us to find out, idiot, we have AI translated bots now. We all know what you're saying anyways. And he goes, don't worry, we're never getting out of Gaza. So that's always been the case. This was always about land. He's gonna wanna take as much of Gaza as possible. If possible, the whole thing. If not, security perimeters, that's the worst case scenario for him. But ideally, he'd like to take a big giant chunk of Gaza. So he goes home and tells the Israelis, don't worry, I'm not gonna listen to that idiot Trump. We're gonna stay in there no matter what happens, right? So which leads to step number 3, Anna, and this is the prediction. So Hamas will, if this goes to fruition, and it looks like it's on a track to get there, Hamas will release the hostages, and then Israel will immediately stop listening to the deal. They'll break every ceasefire, they'll go back to bombing, etc. Why? Well, theoretically, there's a peace deal, and Trump said there was peace, and we're getting the Nobel. What happened? Well, they'll say, well, no. Hamas didn't fully comply. Hamas actually is the one breaking this deal. Even though they gave the hostages back, X number of weapons were returned in, X number of Hamas was turned in, or whatever it is. You know what? It should have been X plus 2. It should have been X plus 10. It should have been 2X. Not good enough, not good enough, not good enough. So since Hamas didn't do an impossible standard that they couldn't possibly do. And even if they did it, we'd make up something new. We're gonna go back to bombing, back to occupying, back to taking Gaza. Because there's nothing in the world that's gonna stop Bibi Netanyahu from trying to set up greater Israel. He literally said he's on a historic and spiritual mission for greater Israel, which includes Gaza and the West Bank. So that's why, Anna, when Trump is like, wait, why aren't you optimistic? We're gonna get the hostages back. I can't believe that after all this time, he's still that naive that he thinks that Netanyahu cares about the hostages or wants peace. He wants the exact opposite. He doesn't want peace. And that there's not a single advisor to Trump who's apparently can tell him, oh, Mr. President, no, Netanyahu doesn't want to get the peace at all. And when you see it from that angle, then every one of his actions makes perfect sense.
Well, I don't think those advisors exist within the Trump administration. And if they ever did, we all know Laura Loomer targeted them and effectively got rid of them, convinced Trump to get rid of them. So congratulations. But apparently on Saturday, Trump confirmed the call took place in an interview with Barack Ravid, meaning the call with Benjamin Netanyahu. He says, quote, I said, Bibi, this is your chance for victory. He was fine with it. He's got to be fine with it. He has no choice. With me, you got to be fine, pretending as though, he's been a real tough guy with Benjamin Netanyahu when he's actually like shown the entire world his whole ass about how weak he is in the face of Netanyahu. It's been a complete and utter humiliation for the American people. Trump told Axios in an interview that he was warned by his team ahead of time or ahead of the call that Netanyahu had reservations, but Trump said that when they spoke, Netanyahu agreed to move forward. Netanyahu's word is as good as a soiled diaper, in my opinion. But you can make your decision on that to the audience members watching. And negotiations for a permanent ceasefire and the release of all hostages began today in Egypt. US envoy Steve Witkoff is heading up the US team, which is brokering the talks. And Trump's son-in-law, Jared Kushner, who wants to invest in real estate in Gaza, is also expected to attend. Pardon me if that doesn't inspire much confidence for people like me, but nonetheless, according to Ravid, Trump will not let the negotiators leave Egypt without a ceasefire in place. Take a look.
Donald Trump is completely adamant on getting a deal in the coming days. And he will do everything in his power to make it happen. That's what I learned from talking to him directly over the last few days and from talking to all of his closest advisors. He does not take as an option a collapse of those talks and that will end with no deal. I don't think Donald Trump and his team will allow either of the negotiators from both sides to leave Egypt without a deal. This is why I think there is a bigger chance than ever before that this will get done in the coming days.
Well, from his mouth to God's ears, we'll see if that happens. But I'm happy that there's some optimism here. I wish that I could partake in said optimism, but there have been so many moments over the last 2 years where it appeared that we were getting very close to a real ceasefire, a lasting, permanent end to the just unmitigated slaughter we've been seeing in Gaza. But really, I'm not gonna get excited until I see some real action and until I see Israeli troops pulling out of the Gaza Strip. And by the way, last Friday, President Trump told Israel to stop bombing Gaza after Hamas had accepted the peace deal, and they continued. In fact, they continue bombing Gaza today. The Israelis have switched their messaging to claim that they're only engaging in defense operations against a population of people who are unarmed. Okay, in reality, over 100 people have been killed in Gaza ever since Trump made that order. So Netanyahu continues to humiliate the president of the United States on the global stage, thus humiliating the American people. That's our special ally. Final word from you, Cenk?
Yeah, so look, Trump is trying to get the peace. So it's not fake. He wants it on his record. Is it about self-aggrandizing? Sure, who cares? I'd much rather have him self-aggrandize with peace than with war. And he's doing the same thing Jimmy Carter did to get peace between Israel and Egypt. I had the pleasure of interviewing President Carter about it and read all the details in his library, etc. Basically, the bottom line is he would not let the Israeli or the Egyptian leader leave Camp David until they got to a peace deal. He kept grounding their helicopters. Literally, physically wouldn't let them leave, okay? And they did get to a peace deal, and that was a real peace deal. And super last things about Jared Kushner. So folks are like, oh no, here comes Jared Kushner. He's gonna try to snake in there and get some sort of real estate deal for himself. And what's he, why, he's not even in the government, why is he there? All that is potentially true, certainly, right? And you should definitely be wary of him. But I think that there's a secret reason why Jared Kushner's there that they're not sharing with you guys. It's because the Arabs, Qatar, Egypt, Hamas, peace negotiators, etc., are worried that if there's not someone there to guarantee their safety, that Israel will murder them all. Because that's what Israel's done now with several peace negotiator groups in a row, with Iran and with Hamas. And now everyone is worried that if you try to get to a peace negotiation, Israel will just bomb you. So if you put Jared Kushner in there, Israel can't kill everyone in the room. I mean, if you think that's like overly skeptical or cynical, okay, fine. But I think that's part of the reason why he's there.
When we come back, we'll talk about all of the individuals who were detained by the Israelis who were part of that flotilla humanitarian aid mission to try to get some humanitarian aid into the Gaza Strip. Many of them have testified that they've been mistreated while in Israeli detention. We'll give you all those details and Israel's response to it when we come back.
So let's go to Super Chat again. Crusader of Cuddles, wonderfully generous. So first comment he had was Trump's National Guard deployments violate the Posse Comitatus Act. No Congress involvement, no evidence, just illegal military force on US soil. Thankfully, the courts are blocking it. For something like this, doesn't Trump need Congress's approval? So you're totally right about the Posse Comitatus Act, right about every part of it. But Trump doesn't like to get Congress's approval. He doesn't want Congress's approval. And even if Congress, in this case, I don't think Congress can approve it. I mean, they'd have to rewrite the laws. That's the only way that they could approve it. Otherwise, no, you cannot send the military in to police the American citizens. But he never checks with what's legal. That's why people are worried that he's authoritarian. It's not complicated to figure out why people are worried. The right wing's always like, oh, I can't tell why, I can't tell why. When you ignore Congress, the courts, and try to institute military rule in America, that's why people think you're authoritarian. What was complicated about that? All right, Crusader also wrote in, and remember though, it is of Cuddles. Show aerial image to CNN and Fox News to reveal hypocrisy of most moral army. Then why does Gaza resemble Dresden, 1945? If this is minimizing casualties, what's the benchmark for war crimes? Media asked Netanyahu, how many children per Hamas tunnel justifies flattening a city? So I think that it kind of looks like Stalingrad actually. So after the Nazis leveled it, and they tried to kill everyone inside, so they would break the will of the Russians, and they were unable to do that. And I'm enormously proud of the Palestinians because the Israelis, in their infinite brutality, have not been able to break the will of the Palestinians in Gaza. Wonderful people. All of our hearts should go out to them. Unlike the incredible liars in mainstream media, we believe, based on overwhelming evidence, that the Palestinians are the victims, not the Israelis. No, the Israelis that have been slaughtering the Palestinians for 2 straight years are not the victims unless you turn in to American media, where they're like, oh my God, how about their feelings, their feelings. So as you can tell, I loathe mainstream media. All right, Notebook writes in, Anna always looks so damn good. That's a YouTube member. Wait, hold on, I got one for me in a little bit. Michael Rosamila writes in, Jimmy Carter was such a good man, it's hard to believe he managed to become president at all. Read my book, Justice is Coming, and you'll see. That's because it was pre-1978. After Supreme Court legalized bribery in 1978, our politics devolved terribly. We lost the middle class that we had created, Jimmy Carter was elected in 1976, before the era of big money in politics. That's why back then a decent person could get elected. Drakin says, in all sincerity, I wish Trump the best on this one, but understand who you are dealing with. I totally agree. I wish Trump the best on this, getting a real peace deal. We're non-biased. He's terrible on bringing the military into the streets, and really good on trying to get to a peace deal. Terrible on following Israel. And after he gets the hostages back, he probably won't care anymore. Just brag about the hostages and let Israel run amok again. Probably. On the other hand, he's a wild card. He's the only president we've ever had that's this big of a wild card, both on the downside and a tiny bit on the upside, like this one. Young Tilla 850C2 says, country of 9 million, greater than the country of 350 million. Well, certainly in power, there's no question about it. America heals when Israel gives a command. Anyone who says otherwise is lying to you on purpose to protect Israel and to do their propaganda for them. Brenda Jones says, you gotta love Jeffrey Sachs. He keeps it real with what is really going on. Yep, and others have asked us to invite him on as well, and we'd love to, and I'm out of time. All right, back on TYT, Cenk and Anna with you guys, and all of our members, including the ones on TYT.com. I'm gonna read two last ones here. Bloated Ego said, there's one thing that could stop Bibi. If he stopped funding, that is the only thing that might do it, but those chances are at zero. Yeah, isn't it hilarious that our government says, well, I mean, we can't not take your money and give it to Israel. That's a must. No one is allowed to disagree with that. Says we don't have that option, we must obey Israel. We have to look at other options. And then media's like, what? Anyways, I read a nice compliment to Anna from a YouTube member during the social break. Lopside Gecko says, Cenk, you look absolutely gorgeous today. Well, I didn't say it, but the folks in the streets apparently are talking about it. No, you're awesome. It's not true, but I love you anyway. Casper.
All right, let's get to our next story.
אלה הטרוריסטים של המשט, אלה הטרוריסטים, די טרוריסט. תל עליהם, תומכי רוצחים, אגב, האוניות שלהם נמצאו קרחנה שלמה. הם לא באו באמת, לא למשט, לא לעזור, אלא הם באו בעד עזה, בעד הטרוריסטים. אלה טרוריסטים.
Even though Israel's national security minister, Itamar Ben-Gvir, is a literal convicted terrorist, he accused humanitarians who were detained as part of the Global Sumud Flotilla as being as such. Now, in reality, the 137 activists who were detained by Israel were actually seeking to deliver humanitarian aid to Palestinians in Gaza who are still intentionally being starved to death. And some of the detainees have spoken out about the torturous conditions imposed by the Israelis after they were, taken captive by the Israeli government, including 70-year-old Margaret Pacetta, who's from Scotland. Take a listen to what she had to say about the conditions of the prison that she was sent to.
That prison was awful. Oh, I bet it was. Wow. In the gym. Yeah. No food, no water. My broken leg, the girl said to me, oh, what happened to your leg? I said, it's broke. She slammed the metal door on it and went, sorry. No. Oh my God. Horrible, horrible. Oh.
So that 70-year-old woman you just heard from has a broken leg, and she claims that the Israelis slammed a metal door on her broken leg as she was in detention. Now, two others who were part of the flotilla said that Swedish activist Greta Thunberg, who was in Israeli custody but no longer is, was also mistreated during her detention. Hazwani Helmi, a Malaysian citizen, and Winfield Beaver, an American citizen, told Reuters at the airport that they had witnessed Thunberg being mistreated, saying that she was shoved and forced to wear an Israeli flag. 28-year-old Helmi said that detainees were not being given clean food or water, and that their medications and belongings had been confiscated. It was a disaster. They treated us like animals. Beaver said Thunberg was treated terribly and used as propaganda, describing how she was pushed into a room as National Security Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir arrived. Now, an official who visited Thunberg in prison claimed that she was being held in a cell infested with bed bugs and had no food or little food and water. And then earlier today, Greta was released from detention and deported to Greece, where she confirmed that she was, in fact, subjected to abuses, but didn't go into detail. Take a look.
I could talk for a very, very long time about our mistreatment and abuses in our imprisonment, trust me, but that is not the story. What happened here was that Israel, while continuing to worsen and escalate their genocide and mass destruction with genocidal intent, attempting to erase an entire population, an entire nation in front of our very eyes.
Now, as you can imagine, that looks pretty embarrassing for the Israeli government to basically torture humanitarians who are just trying to break the siege of Gaza and get humanitarian aid to people who are intentionally being starved to death. And so as a result, the Israelis have denied that these individuals have been mistreated. The foreign ministry described reports that detainees had been mistreated as complete lies. But apparently Ben-Gvir didn't get the memo that he's supposed to spout this specific lie and instead said something counter to what the Israeli foreign ministry said. In fact, he says anyone who supports terror is a terrorist, referring to the humanitarians on the flotilla as terrorists, and deserves the conditions of terrorists. And that statement came after reports that Thunberg was mistreated, by the way. Ben-Gvir said he, quote, took pride in the fact that we treat the flotilla activists as terror supporters. Again, Itamar Ben-Gvir is a literal convicted terrorist, but let me continue. He also said, quote, they should feel what the conditions in Ketziat prison are like and think twice before approaching Israel again. That's how it works. So I'm gonna go ahead and take Ben-Gvir's word for it because what he's saying is consistent with the way the Israeli government has been behaving. So Cenk, what are your thoughts?
Every Israeli accusation is a confession. So as he's sitting there pointing at them going, they are terrorists, terrorists. What he's saying is, first of all, he is, as Anna pointed out, a convicted terrorist. And, but mainly what he's saying is, I want you to do terrorism on them. I want you to terrorize them. I want you to drag them by the hair. I want you to slam their legs. I want you to treat them like they're Palestinians. Well, in a sense, thank you, because then the world sees better how you treat Palestinians. And so now that they're doing it to Europeans, people are seeing it with their own eyes and they're, oh, that's a little grandmother from Scotland who's got a broken leg and you're gonna slam a door into it. Well, what do you think they've been doing to Palestinian grandmothers for 2 years straight? Other than, of course, blowing their heads off when they drop a bomb on them or lighting them on fire when they drop a bomb on them. What do you think they've been doing to Palestinian children? They've been slaughtering them one by one or 100 at a time. What do you think happens when they drop bombs? So I love the flotilla because they're putting a spotlight where it needs to be. And they're showing the world the disgusting terrorist Ben-Gvir and the disgusting terrorist government of Israel, the current government of Israel, and how they do their terrorism. So yeah, that's how they treat Palestinians on a daily basis because they think they're Übermensch, that they are superior and the Palestinians are subhuman. And so he's saying, look, even though they look white, even though they are European, you should treat them like we treat the Palestinians, like subhumans, terrorists. If you're still defending this Israeli government, you lost your moral thread at some point. You just lost it. You're so blinded and biased. You're like, no, starving the children is a good thing. That's what the moral army would do. 87. So like, I got it. But the rest of the world sees it clear as day. And the flotilla is just yet another example. And by the way, and I don't know if you know this part of the story, Ro Khanna has been trying to get in touch with a Jewish American who's from California, who's part of the flotilla. And Israel's like, shut up. For a long time, they would not even respond. And then he is asking our government, Marco Rubio, can you please find out the whereabouts of the American citizen there? And Marco Rubio, no response. Because the American government.
Yeah, they don't care about us.
They don't care about us. No.
Are you kidding me? No, we're just pay pigs for that foreign government. They don't care about us. Marco Rubio is a disgusting hack. Did you know that Marco Rubio was vetted by Oracle founder Larry Ellison as he was running for the Republican primary in 2015? Homeboy was literally sharing his presidential speeches with Larry Ellison for approval. It's disgusting.
Hey,
forget
real
about
quick.
that. Hold on. Forget about that. We got to move on because I just want to give you 1 point of victory here. It's a small thing, but we gotta take the wins where we can get it, because the Israeli authorities were so obsessed and so preoccupied with detaining and terrorizing the humanitarians on the flotilla that it actually freed up an opportunity for the Palestinians to do something they've been banned from doing: fish for food. Palestinians in Gaza can't fish for food because if they do, Israeli authorities shoot and kill them. And because they were preoccupied, the Palestinians that you just saw in that video were able to fish. I just wanted to share that with you.
Yeah,
all right.
No. So that's actually super important because almost no one knows about it. As usual, American media is like, oh, I can't criticize Israel. Israel's been purposely, intentionally murdering the fishermen of Gaza. And why the fishermen? Because then they would be able to feed the population. And they want to starve the population, so they shoot the fishermen in the head. That's why, they're distracted. Let's go fish for a second without the IDF murdering us. So the IDF is obviously a terrorist organization. It's the biggest terrorist organization in the world right now. It murders civilians on purpose, way more than Hamas does. That's a fact based on the IDF numbers. 83% civilian kill ratio. They intentionally murder fishermen. They treat Palestinians as subhuman. Israel has lost its way. If you care about Israel, you need to stop defending these atrocities and try to get them out of the morass that they're in. But I know everybody's blind and can't see. I gotta say one last thing about the Marco Rubio. We did cover that on Friday's show. You should check out that video. And Drop Site News is doing brilliant work. And Kate, if we can, let's drop their article about that story in the description box down below on YouTube. Because not only did Larry Ellison vet Marco Rubio on behalf of Israel. This was back in the 2016 election. And then he sent a note back to the Israeli ambassador. He has been vetted. He will be friendly to Israel. He then sent him a $5 million check through a super PAC. That's not even among the 1 million that Marco Rubio took from AIPAC. And then if you say that out loud, American media goes, how dare you say things that are true? Don't you know the job of the media is to bury the truth on behalf of Israel? Trope. No. He's actually doing it. The Israeli lobby is actually buying off almost all of our politicians so that we will ignore the atrocious genocide that terrorist government is committing right now.
When we come back from the break, we'll talk a little bit about Project Honeypot that has been deployed by Israel. It's so obvious, you gotta laugh at it. Come right back.
They failed us. And if you're not angry about that, Michael, and any of you out there, then you're damn wrong, because you should be angry. Young Turks.
It was genuine. He was mad.
Cenk Uygur, known online as one of the Young Turks, isn't afraid to throw some punches.
3, 2, 1, fade up.
Cenk the Turk Uygur.
What kind of TV station is this? The whole point is for me to yell and scream and tell you what I think.
It was right out of like Wayne's World.
This guy on this little rinky-dink website is speaking truth to power.
We've been averaging 600,000 views a day, beating most of the cable shows in America.
We're the largest online news show in the world.
We're celebrating our 1 billionth view.
Television, we're coming.
More politics ahead with Cenk Uygur.
He knew that the MSNBC opportunity was an experiment.
And Phil and host beat CNN and Headline News combined. At some point, they want to give me a show.
Every single year, that comes out of our paycheck. We put it in, and you're saying we were suckers.
When you, as a host, tells someone you're interviewing to shut up, that's going to raise a red flag.
That guy needed a tall glass of shut up juice.
If President Obama's doing the wrong thing, I'm not going to tell you that he's doing the right thing so I can, quote, support him.
He says to me, You won't believe the meeting that I just had.
The head of MSNBC talked to me.
They want him off the air.
Cenk took an incredible risk.
We're supposed to challenge the government. That's the role of the media. The Democrats and the Republicans are here to screw you. And who on the air is saying it?
I wouldn't have done what he did.
That if I'm going to be a talk show host, I should be the biggest talk show host in the country. I don't think anyone else does it better. I don't think anyone's even close.
Before you know it, I'll be back on your TV doing a national show. I guarantee it.
Magic. It's showtime. And say 45 minutes. I'm hosting today. Now I know what you're thinking, JR, your face is already perfect, but you know what? I still need to apply some makeup. I went through this process, right? A few years ago. When I realized that I was gonna have to wear makeup on the show. I had to go through like finding out what my undertones were. You guys know what those are? I got my MAC Cosmetics. It says SPF 15 foundation, broad spectrum. But apparently what I have is red undertones, and I think pores are not supposed to be seen. I need all these things to be confirmed for me. These sponge things don't work for me. You gotta use your hands. This I did. That's how the magic really happens. So we're gonna go through a tutorial. How to make the magic happen from beautiful to beautifuler. Let's go. I've already been moisturized. That's the first thing. But moisturization already happened. We go raw. All hands. Pick up. Couple streaks. This is the guy way of putting on makeup. We got dots. There's some shiny points that generally happen. First of all, here we go. You dust here. I'm putting way too much for you dust. Oh, get the excess off. You don't want chunky powder. There's like a T-zone, I think, right? Mine is a double T-zone. Because I went middle and another cross. Make sure your nose isn't all shiny. People get on you for it. You know, say, that's not a good point you made on there, JR. Your nose is shiny. You guys are picky like that sometimes. I think that's about it, fellas and ladies. See you guys next time. Bitsies.
I just love you. I just love you.
Back on the online news show, The Young Turks, Cenk, Anna Kasparian, and Jake Brooks. Jake, thanks for joining. We appreciate it, brother. He hit that beautiful join button right below the video on YouTube. You got it. Casper, what's next?
Well, Cenk, something is abreast when it comes to the propaganda campaign carried out by the Israeli government. If you don't know what I'm talking about, here's a little taste.
All Jews are Israelis, even if you haven't filled out your paperwork just yet. Because remember, we were a people first, far before we were ever a religion. Judaism was just a way of life, a set of beliefs and traditions that our nation followed. So that's why we speak a Semitic language. That's why when we pray, we face Jerusalem, and our synagogues are built to face Jerusalem.
Well, that low-cut top was certainly a choice, a very intentional one. Because Israeli paid honeypot propagandists, as I like to think of them, are flooding social media as Israel attempts to essentially launder its current image and reputation as a belligerent and genocidal regime. Now, let's back up a little bit, because Netanyahu had met with American influencers after his UN General Assembly speech. You know, that speech where literally dozens of international diplomats walked out because he is a war criminal. Yeah, that one. And after meeting with them, there were some posts from the Prime Minister of Israel X page saying that the Prime Minister met after his UN General Assembly speech with pro-Israel influencers and spoke with them about the challenges in the new era and the public diplomacy efforts and the influence of the social networks on the discourse for and against Israel. And during that meeting, he was on camera and he just openly said, we got to take over TikTok and we got to have a conversation with Elon Musk to do something about X to ensure that pro-Israel propaganda is being dispersed. And those pictures that he shared actually ended up coming in very handy because soon after that meeting, Responsible Statecraft had reported that a cohort of American influencers were getting paid $7,000 per pro-Israel post on social media. Now, here's one of the influencers who was in fact present during that meeting with Bibi. She goes by Shay. She writes, this is hilarious. I'm all about America first, but that doesn't mean America alone.
Yeah.
Are you? I mean, just note that her handle is Judean CEO. Really? You're all about America first? Okay. Now she says that America first doesn't mean America alone. But but many feel America would actually do better without its ties to a genocidal welfare state like Israel that relies on US taxpayer money in order to do pretty much everything. Plus, Israel needed our bombs in order to carry out strikes in Iran. And in her post, she makes it seem as though Israel is protecting the United States by fighting off Iran. Just not true. And some are smart enough to see what's going on here. I want to give you some of the responses to her post. By the way, very pretty girl. I'm not going to deny that. However, there she is with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Another person, by the way, but just quickly going back to the photo that I had referenced earlier, there she is with evidence that she was in that meeting with Bibi. One of my favorite things that's now pretty common on social media in response to posts like this is that people are making reference to the amount of money these influencers are getting paid per pro-Israel post on social media. I'll give you a taste of just two of them. Here's one showing Netanyahu as a game show host giving $7,000. Another person posted plus $7,000. $7,000 has been deposited into your account. And there are more examples, which I'll give you in just a minute. But Cenk, what do you think about this, honeypot propaganda scheme? Do you think it's gonna win over the hearts and minds of Americans who have soured on the Israeli government?
All right, there's three things here. Two of them are, one is serious, one is hopeful, one is light. So let's get started. First of all, this could be basically characterized as tatas for Israel. Okay, and I guess Netanyahu wants Israel and America to be bosom buddies. Okay.
Don't be a boob, Cenk. Don't be a boob.
We should get Colonel Tata back on here to discuss it. Anyways, I mean, that's, guys, you gotta realize how funny that is. Again, this is not a left or right one at all, right? Israel's basically going like this to you, thinking, oh, dumb American men, here, look at Israeli boobs. Okay, so now give us, okay, like here, I gave that chick $7,000. Now you give me $13 billion. Don't let them rob you, okay? And so it's, but Anna, that leads to the hopeful part, which is in the old days, nobody would have caught this. I've seen them run things like this, not exactly this at all, but different propaganda campaigns like hundreds of times. And no one ever, of course, mainstream media works for them, so that they're useless. We'll come back to them in a second. But in the old days, there was nobody to catch them. Now, I don't even know if it's right-wingers or left-wingers who are doing these videos, right? But they're getting caught all over the place. They're like, oh yeah, that's another 7,000, the 7,000 club. I made that up. Okay, anyway, so, and they're all getting called out, and I love it. I love it when the internet catches people. Everybody's getting caught. That's a huge phenomenon, which leads us to the last point, which is a serious one. So Bibi in that gathering with the influencers, we've shown it to you a couple times, says, okay, we're gonna buy TikTok, we're gonna get allies, and we're gonna influence Elon Musk to be pro-Israel on X, and we're gonna control the media, and you're all getting paid. I mean, it's kind of like literally like a stripper, right? Because he's like, all right, here's the money. They're like, oh, all right. And so I don't know if they threw in a lap dance while they were at it. And so, and then you go, oh, it looks like Israel is obviously influencing American media. And mainstream media goes, anti-Semite. Oh, come on, guys. Come on. You can't complain about a trope if you're doing the trope. And you're announcing 100%. It to the world publicly, right? We are trying to control American media. You said it, I didn't say it.
So true, so true. But look, that was just a little taste, okay? We've got some more honeypot action going on. I wanna give you another example. This one is just so crazy in how lazy the propaganda is that, again, you just have to laugh. So recently, one of these propagandists tried to lie about the 44 boats that made up the Sumud Flotilla that tried to get humanitarian aid to the Palestinian civilians in Gaza. And luckily, in her attempt to lie about the humanitarians and what they were really up to, she was just so bad at it that it was easy to debunk her. And I want you to get a sense of just how lazy she was. Take a look.
So this Zionist lady recently tried to expose the Gaza Freedom Flotilla by claiming that the boats didn't actually have any aid on them.
Hi everyone, it is Lizzie Savetsky. I'm reporting to you live from Greta's Flotilla, where 44 boats were intercepted yesterday, allegedly bringing aid to Gaza. Let's go inside, I'll give you a tour. Margarita machine and some empty bottles.
Yeah, hold on, lady. Let's take a closer look at those empty bottles. The labels on these products are written in Hebrew, which means they come from Israel. So you're telling me that Greta Thunberg brought Israeli products from Sweden? Or did you just plant them here so you could push your dumbass narrative? $7,000 has been deposited in your account. She also claims that there was paraphernalia and needles on the boat, but I guess they were too lazy to actually plant any because she never shows it.
Like, okay, so are the humanitarians doing heroin on the boat? Like, it's just so ridiculous. It really is. And of course, she was also pictured with Netanyahu after his UN General Assembly speech. Let's take a look. There she is, right there in the middle. You'll also notice that Emily Austin is in the picture. She's another one of these Israeli propagandists. She's usually on Piers Morgan's show, getting her ass handed to her. And on October 17th, she'll be on Her Take. Really looking forward to having her on the show. And so, by the way, she's also the one who put out this banger. Again, this is Emily Austin. Take a look.
Imagine supporting people who start wars just to lose the wars so they can cry about it and then try it all again.
You must see anti-Semites are literally obsessed with Jews. Now walk with me. While you must see anti-Semites are stacking eviction notices, Jews are out here stacking up businesses.
Jews control all the industries. Maybe if you spent more time taking notes from successful people, you wouldn't have to spend your nights and weekends spreading hate from your anonymous account with an anime profile picture.
Do you work as hard as Jews? Do you network like Jews? No, because you're too busy cheering on a group of musty terrorists who smell like dirty earring backs. And if we're gonna keep it real, you're really mad because your income is giving side hustle.
Period.
How you gonna hate from outside, Shabbat? You can't even get in.
That video is supposed to make people like Israel? Like, who was that for? That was so bad. And Cenk, there's at least one person, one influencer who at least had a little bit of self-awareness to understand, I probably am not gonna look good if I'm in this photo of other US influencers who are getting bought off by the nation state of Israel. Let's take a quick look at that gentleman. Here he is trying to hide behind someone. It's so good. It's so good.
Yeah. But don't worry, he's gonna be wearing short shorts in his next video. And he's gonna be like, oh, look at this, ladies. Come and get it for Israel. And when Emily Austin's getting her ass handed to her on Piers Morgan, she's like, hey, everybody, look at it though, look at it. For Israel, my ass. That video you just showed was so weird. So it does two things.
It was so embarrassing.
Yeah.
It was so cringy. I can't believe they thought that was a good idea. But please, by all means, do more of that. I'm sure it'll work out real well for Israel.
No, but there is one huge problem. As always, they're conflating the terrible actions of the current Israeli government with all Jews. Don't do that. That's what drives anti-Semitism, right? So they're almost trying to egg on anti-Semitism so they can complain about it, so that they can keep murdering Palestinians and then go, yeah, anyone who complains is an anti-Semite. I mean, what was that? That whole thing of like, haha, the Jews are the best. We run all the industries. You better get along for it. What was that? How does that help you? That's like maniacal. If Candace Owens put that out, everybody would be like, oh my God, it's the most anti-Semitic thing we've ever seen. So these guys are nuts, man. And yet, I'll never get over it. As we all, the entire world has woken up, the entire country, left, right, everyone has woken up to what Israel's doing. And it's so obvious because they're literally shoving it in your face, their breast, their ass, everything, right? Their money, all of it, right? The politicians and the media in America, 98% of the powerful people in this country are like, what? I don't see it. Israel, what's that? Oh, you must be an anti-Semite if you say Israel's doing propaganda online or in the media. All right, you guys want to ruin your whole lives, your careers, everything, just so you can kiss the ass that Israel is offering up? That's an embarrassing way to go through life. But hey, you do you, boo.
All right, let's get to something a little more serious before we go to break because, well, Van Jones certainly stepped in it recently while appearing on Bill Maher's show. So let's give you the details along with his apology. And then I'm curious if you all accept his apology. So here are the details. On Friday, CNN contributor Van Jones joked about the horrific slaughter of literal children in the Gaza Strip. And this was during an episode of Real Time with Bill Maher. Bill Maher, by the way, huge defender of Israel, tends to think that all Muslims are dangerous extremists. So you kind of get a sense of the environment in which Van Jones made that statement. Now, Jones has since apologized for some of his remark, but that wasn't good enough for Democratic Senator Chris Van Hollen, who addressed the bigger issue with what Jones had to say. And we'll get to that statement in just a minute. But first, here's what Jones said on Real Time. Quote, Iran and Qatar have come up with a disinformation campaign that they are running through TikTok and Instagram that is massive. If you're a young person, you open up your phone and all you see is dead Gaza baby, dead Gaza baby, dead Gaza baby, Diddy, dead Gaza baby, dead Gaza baby. That's basically your whole feed. Now, let me just pause to say that it's not a disinformation campaign that there are a bunch of dead Gazan babies because Israel has leveled the Gaza Strip and killed at minimum tens of thousands of innocent civilians. And again, I really want to emphasize the at minimum part. So maybe it's not a disinformation campaign. Maybe it's the reality on the ground. And why do you take issue with the public knowing about the reality on the ground? Nonetheless, the next day, Jones apologized for what he said on X. Here's an excerpt from his post. The suffering of the people of Gaza, especially the children, is not a punchline. I'm deeply sorry it came across that way. What's happening to children in Gaza is heartbreaking. As a father, I can't begin to imagine the pain their parents are enduring, unable to protect their kids from unimaginable harm. Now, Senator Van Hollen did respond to that apology, saying the following. I'm glad Van Jones apologized for his sick joking about dead kids in Gaza, but the problem goes deeper. He spread Netanyahu propaganda that the mass killings of civilians in Gaza, including 20,000 plus kids, is Iranian fake news. He also cited Qatar, by the way, which is a US ally. I noticed that there's been more and more rhetoric that's meant to like pit the US against Qatar, but let me just continue. It's not the students and young people who are fooled, it's Van Jones. And I completely agree with that take. In fact, it's the Israeli prime minister who has outright admitted that he seeks complete control of TikTok and X, and yet pro-IDF mouthpieces are running with the Qatar line. So I'll give you more of that in just a minute. But Cenk, Van Jones, he's hit or miss. Sometimes I agree with him, sometimes I deeply, deeply disagree with him. We've had relatively friendly relations with him, but I'm curious if you think that his apology was adequate enough.
No, I'm not worried about the apology. And this is not just a disagreement. I think this is worse, and it's a little heartbreaking. So let's dive into the details. So he does the joke, haha, funny Gaza, dead babies. Thomas Friedman and Bill Maher laughed their ass off. Like, dead babies. Imagine if they were dead Jewish babies. Dead Jew baby, dead Jew baby, dead Jew, P. Diddy, dead Jew baby. What would happen? Van Jones' career would be over instantly, right? It's over. Please tell me it wouldn't be over. Please make a fool of yourself and tell me that. Of course, everybody knows it would be over. You can't do that, for Israelis or certainly Jews in America. And maybe and I think you probably shouldn't be able to for Jews. For Israel, you can say anything you like. But for Muslims, who cares? Who cares? Who cares about their stupid Friedman and Maher laugh, right? So look, but nevertheless, I care way less about jokes. So if it was just that and then he apologized, I would get past it. It's not the end of the world. Okay. But Iran and Qatar are doing propaganda on TikTok and Instagram? No one believes that. No. The only reason that you say that is if you're a propagandist for Israel, period. So super disappointing. I couldn't be more disappointed. Van Jones doesn't actually think that. There's no way that a rational, smart human being believes that. That is a talking point given to him by some Israeli handler. I guarantee it. Iran and Qatar. What are there all those 20,000 dead kids fake? Iran just made up the videos? Qatar did? No, nobody believes that in their right mind. That's what he should apologize for. Of course, the people that are doing propaganda on Instagram and TikTok are Israel. And Netanyahu said on camera, we're having people buy TikTok for us. And then X will be under control because Elon is a friend. We're going to take control of these media companies. Okay, he's saying it on tape. And then Van Jones comes out, it is not Israel doing propaganda in the media. It is Iran and Qatar. Get out of here. No, I'm done. I'm not interested in Van Jones anymore. So come on, man. Jesus Christ, have some self-respect. So no, and guys, TV is filled to the rim with Israeli propagandists. There are people. There are people who are pundits on television. I don't want to start wars here, media wars, but that have been found when they were young, and then their political career was funded by AIPAC and other Israeli lobbies. They've been funded by the Israelis for decades, and then they get put on TV like, rando state senator. He was such a promising state senator. So now CNN has him as a pundit. I'm not naming names. And then that pundit always comes out when Israel's accused of racism or something, and all of a sudden a black pundit shows up on air and goes, no, the real bigotry against this poor Israel. They're crushing the Palestinians. Who cares? Who cares about the Palestinians? Now, did you tell him that you've been getting checks from Israel the whole time? I'm not talking about Van Jones. I don't know what Van Jones' story is, but obviously he's given talking points by Israel because that is pure propaganda. It has a 0% truth, 0%. But if you say, hey, Israel is literally saying on air, we're going to buy TikTok. Mitt Romney said it, and other Democratic congressmen said it. They said, China's not the real problem with TikTok. Israel is. Israel's telling us to cut TikTok out. Those are all on tape. But if you say it on CNN, they'll be like, anti-Semite, cancel him, ruin his life, right? But Van Jones can come on and totally lie about how, the all-powerful Iran and Qatar, boy, they're really running TikTok. What a joke, what a colossal joke. But CNN, HBO is like, boy, way to go. Way to defend Israel and make up lies to do propaganda for them. So I don't give a goddamn about the joke. The fake news, 100% fake news that he put out there is the real problem. And thank you, Chris Van Hollen. That's a real senator. I can't believe we have a real senator in Congress.
All right, we got to take a break. When we come back, we'll switch gears a little bit and talk about the state of retirement savings for Americans and just how brutal this economy really is for the average American. Come right back.
bunch of anti-Muslim bigots all over mainstream media. They're all racist and bigots. And they don't care about Muslims at all. They're like, oh, you're gonna slaughter Muslims? Where's the paycheck, Israel? Where's the paycheck? I'm ready, right? So just know who you are. You're not in news, okay? Stop embarrassing yourself by pretending you're in news. I'm not just saying that to Van, I'm saying to every Israeli propagandist on television, which is almost all of them. Kelly K says, any smidgen of hope I had about the peace deal died when I found out Jared Kushner was in Egypt as part of the American negotiator team. Why is he there? He is not part of the federal government in any capacity. The only reason I can think of it is because he's talked about developing the Gaza Strip for almost a decade. Kelly, those are good points. As I mentioned earlier, I kind of alluded to your statement in the middle of the show, but Kushner might be there to make sure that the Israelis don't blow up the place. So that's just my theory. I don't know if that's part of the reason why. So, but they are trying to assure the Arabs that, hey, if you go to a peace negotiation, we won't let Israel murder you as usual, okay? But I'm sure that they're the moral army. So, oh my God, I'm so worried about bigotry. Shit, kill all the Muslims. Kill them all, but I'm worried about bigotry. Okay, yeah. Dirge says, exactly, Trump sees the American people as his enemy for not reelecting him in 2020. But to be fair, brother, even before he caught feelings over 2020, he wanted to bring the troops in his first term. He thinks that they're like play troops, and he's like, oh, I gotta bring them in, I'm gonna roll out the tanks on the streets, hey, I'm king. Okay, that's not how the presidency works. Okay, Art Guy says, Trump is under the boot of Israeli blackmailers, so is lashing out against everyone else to look big and tough. Although he is challenging Israel a couple of times these days. Fairest show in America, so I don't know what's going on. I was very surprised to see him challenge Israel and say stop bombing Gaza and things like that. So we'll see. He's an enigma.
I mean, challenging them. They're still bombing Gaza. Like,
yeah, I hear you.
They took his challenge and like took a big crap on it. So I don't know. And he hasn't done anything since. So yeah, I'm not gonna give him credit until he actually accomplishes something on that front. And he hasn't.
There's no way he's gonna get them to stop bombing Gaza. There's no force on earth can get Netanyahu to stop wanting to murder Palestinian babies. And he will do that ad nauseum as people here go, oh, I'm so concerned about the feelings of the Israelis. Stop telling the world that they're killing babies. You're a bad person for saying it. Kill more babies. That's not bad. That's not bad. You saying it, which is a fact, bad. Okay, yeah, I got it. Eclectic writes, and Trump doesn't want peace. He just wants a peace prize. He's willing to do whatever scam he can run in Gaza to get one. Eclectic, I'll take it, brother. If all he wants is a peace prize, I'll give him a sticker. I'll find a cup and a thing. I'll give him whatever he wants as long as we get 2 states and they stop murdering the Palestinians. And by the way, so that Israel can also be safe. I know the Israelis don't want the Palestinians to be safe. They want them to be brutalized forever and ever and ever. Okay? Oh, they've only lived under our boot for 58 years. You think we're gonna let these animals up? No, we're gonna keep them under our boot. We're the moral army, okay? Anyways, anything to get Israel to stop. Scoopster says, so torture by IDF, inconceivable. But mainstream media actually acts like it's inconceivable. They don't even cover it. Eclectic also said, it's telling the US media barely covered the flotilla at all. They avoid reporting on anything that would make Israel look bad, and even the mainstream media can't spin this one, so they just don't talk about it. Of course that's true, because they work for Israel. If they don't, prove it, criticize them, nothing. TYT, Cenk, Anna, news.
All right, well, let's talk a little bit about the growing and disastrous inequality in this country because the economy is not improving for the vast majority of American workers. In fact, things might get worse real soon as a result of AI, but there's some folks who are coming out strong with even more wealth. So let's talk about it. Elon Musk is officially the first person with a net worth of $500 billion. That was reported by Forbes. But while Musk's wealth continues to absolutely skyrocket, ordinary Americans are struggling to make ends meet. Now, according to a new Goldman Sachs report, 40% of working Americans are now living paycheck to paycheck. If current trends continue, Goldman Sachs estimates that 55% of Americans will be living paycheck to paycheck by 2033. Another 40% of Americans state that they are not making meaningful progress on saving for retirement, which is completely disastrous because while I'm obviously very supportive of our Social Security program, Social Security is not meant to be the end all be all in terms of carrying someone financially after retirement. It's just a small amount of money that's supposed to help supplement retirement savings. And so put together, 80% of Americans are making little to no progress on their retirement savings. And that's already a problem. It's getting worse. And according to Goldman Sachs in their report, the cost of retirement has been increasing 4% per year for the last 25 years. So by 2033, the total cost of retirement maybe more than $1.7 million, up from 1.1 million in 2023. Now, other financial milestones are also becoming harder to attain and more expensive. So take buying a home, for example. In the year 2000, home ownership costs ate up 33% of the median household's post-tax income. Today, those same costs make up 51% of the median household's post-tax income. In 2002, the average age of a home buyer was 36 years old. Cenk, you want to take a stab at the age now?
I do not.
Okay, 56. So again, in 2002, the average age was 36 in terms of owning a home for the first time. Now that age has gone up to 56. I've got a lot more to share with you, but this is just completely disastrous.
Yeah. Meanwhile, our media tells us there's nothing wrong. The stock market's up. Stock market's up. What are you guys complaining about? They said it under Biden, and Biden and the Democrats lost because they kept ignoring the real problems in America because they're like, what do you mean? Everyone we know is rich and they love that the stock market is up. Oh, it took you 20 extra years to buy a house? That's a lifetime. Between 36 and 56 is when you raise a family. You buy the house at 56, what good does it do you? And by the way, between 36 and 56, you also accumulate wealth in that house. Now you don't accumulate wealth for 2 more decades. So the rich get richer and the rest of us get poorer. They're crushing the middle class. So yeah, it's gonna be extremely difficult to retire. And no one in power cares at all because they don't represent any of us. They represent the richest people in the country. So they're like, why are you guys still complaining? Elon Musk is up to $500 billion. Well, obviously it must be great times for everyone. And they genuinely, what? Turn on CNBC any day. If the market is up, they're in a circle jerk and they're going like, yes! Hey, how about real people? Oh, who cares about them? And so that's where we are now.
You're totally right about that. And I mean, the numbers just keep getting worse. Remember, one of the main reasons why Donald Trump won in the last presidential race, and in fact secured the popular vote, is because what he ran on was economic issues and yes, immigration and crime as well. But what most Americans were concerned about at the time was the cost of living. And he kept promising that on day one, he's gonna do something about inflation. He's gonna lower the cost of living. Well, has that happened? Let's take a look. 65% of Americans see themselves as either sometimes or regularly financially squeezed each month. And that's up from 58% in June of last year. The University of Michigan Consumer Sentiment Index was 21.4% lower in September than a year earlier. It is now lower than at any point during the 2008-2009 recession. And so, look, part of the problem, Cenk, and you kind of alluded to it, is the metrics that are typically referenced or cited in an effort to make it appear as though our economy is doing really, really well. And if you look at those metrics, it does look like the economy is doing well, but those metrics mostly have to do with how the haves, not the have-nots, are doing well. So let me tell you exactly what I'm referring to. So they'll say that the GDP is rising. that the stock market is hitting new records, and that unemployment is only at 4.3%, which is obviously a deceptive percentage because it doesn't include. I didn't know this until recently. I did an investigative report when it came to unemployment numbers in California, and I found out that the Bureau of Labor Statistics will include individuals who work simply 1 hour a week as employed. So the metric 4.3% does not include those who have given up looking for jobs. They're not counted in at all. And it doesn't even include those who are severely underemployed. They want full-time work, but they can't find it. So a recent Axios piece by Neil Irwin explains why those indicators are not representative of the average American and what he or she goes through. He argues that GDP growth has mostly been fueled by data center and AI investments. And as we know, AI has already essentially effectively gotten rid of jobs, especially in Silicon Valley. Coders are losing their jobs as a result of AI replacing them. Many Americans aren't highly exposed to the stock market, meaning, there are some working class Americans who have, some money invested in the stock market, either through an IRA or a 401k. But in terms of the bulk of investments in the stock market, it overwhelmingly benefits the top 10%. And employers are hiring new workers at the lowest rate in 5 years. That's the reality. That's the reality on the ground. And in a recent piece on Substack, Matt Stoller argues that the American economy is running on inequality rather than working in spite of it. He explains that Americans' wealth is getting more and more tied up in real estate and stocks while wages stagnate. We used to have around 3.5 times our income in aggregate financial assets. Now we have around 6 times that amount. And both consumer and mortgage debt are high, though not nearly as high as they were in the 2008 financial crisis. So that makes Americans' finances extremely precarious. In today's economy, buying a house means having a lot of debt, which brings high fixed payments. So a downturn in the market or a job loss means a family could be in trouble. In the 1950s, housing was cheap. There were no credit card or student loans. Most families paid expenses out of income and had little debt. Fixed expenses were low. So we have financialized our economy, meaning we've encouraged Americans to essentially make ends meet by taking out more and more debt. Housing was cheaper, much cheaper in the 1950s because there was a construction boom. The tract homes that were built in the 1950s led to the mass production of residential real estate, which made it possible for working class Americans to afford a home to buy and raise their families in. That is no longer the case. Cenk, back to you.
Yeah, so back to the first number we talked about. So you need $1.7 million to retire effectively? Who's got $1.7 million? So what, none of us can retire? That's a giant number. That's not like, oh, you know what? If you work your whole life, maybe you could piece together what 400,000, 600,000 because of the 401ks and this, and you were an accountant. 1.7 million? They're asking for a revolution, man. This is totally unsustainable. So, and every party that's in power tries to trick the American people. And they think, oh, it's okay. We got mainstream media on lockdown. CNBC will put on skirts and get pom-poms, be like, stock market, yay, 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 it's going up, right? And every time people are like, yeah, brother, I don't care what CNBC said, I don't watch them. I go get milk and eggs from the grocery store and the prices are higher. So out you go, Biden and Kamala. And now they're doing the same thing to Trump. His worst numbers are on the economy. And no matter how much he goes, yeah, I'm the best in the economy. No one's ever seen an economy like me. The American people are like, yeah, I've seen it. I saw it under Biden. Now it's worse. So 65% feel financially squeezed. That's 2/3 of the country going, we can't breathe. We can't breathe. And then when you go and talk to anybody in power, mainstream media or politicians, nope, they're never gonna help you. Democrats never pass anything that's on their agenda that are actually really popular, that would help people. They're like, no way, no way. The donors did not allow that. Republicans are the party of big business. I mean, come on, guys, you still haven't figured that out? whole creation by the Chamber of Commerce, the Republican Party. So obviously none of them are going to break, lockstep with corporate rule. And Trump pretended to be a populist, and what's he doing? Giant tax cuts for the rich, enormous corporate subsidies. Did he cut the debt? No, he added another 4 trillion. I've lost track. Was it 8 trillion? I don't know. It's trillions and trillions more on top of the debt. And who's going to have to pay that? You are. And then instantly, right after they pass that bill, they start talking about, well, we got to raise the Social Security age. No, we got to have Americans. Every year you don't collect Social Security is $1 in the rich people's pocket. Okay, they're redistributing that wealth right up to them. Get back to the mines. Get back to the assembly lines. You need to work longer, 70 until you're 70, 75, 80. Keep working, because Elon doesn't have enough money. Larry Ellison doesn't have enough money. Bezos doesn't have enough money. Okay, so you get back to the mines. So at some point, the American people are going to say, I had enough of this crap, and so they're all lying to us. And guys, by the way, this is before the AI Nakba. So people have no idea how bad the AI catastrophe is going to be. They're like, oh yeah, the AI will magically create other jobs and then everything will be fine. Every business person I talk to is talking about cutting 25% of their staff as soon as possible. There is going to be a wave of unemployment like we've never seen. And then they're going to tell you, oh, but don't worry, the AI stocks are doing great in the stock market. Nah, they're poking the bear, man. This is a very bad road we're on. You mess with people's money, you mess with their ability to retire, you mess with their ability to pay the rent or the mortgage or to feed their kids, and you're gonna have a massive problem on your hands. And that's where we're headed right now.
Well, when we come back, we'll look to the strong, bold members of the Democratic Party who are fighting to save us from all that is happening during the Trump administration. When we come back, we'll hear from Trump's strongest opponents. Don't miss it.
All righty, so more generosity on Super Chat, especially from Crusader of Cuddles. That is a worthy crusade indeed. So let's do it. First he writes in, Israel's TikTok shills activists discovered apartheid newest side hustle. Just spreading awareness and misinformation. When the paycheck clears, do they cash in shekels or blood money? Hashtag propaganda for profit. So look, I don't need to talk about shekels or blood money. All I know is they get $7,000 to put out Israeli propaganda. So if you're seeing something that's pro-Israel online, it was probably paid for, because no decent moral person would try to defend this genocide 2 years into it. And so that's why they have to bribe Americans to actually do Israeli propaganda, which is an old news. In a lot of ways, they were doing that for mainstream media for my entire life. Elliot says the same thing I've been alluding to. Maybe Trump sent Jared when he saw what happened in Doha. Oh, I see, but you're going further and saying, not to prevent it, but like, oh, this guy's a pain in my ass. Oh, Jared, go to the peace negotiations. I bet the Israelis won't bomb it. Okay, that's devious, Elliot. Okay, no, I don't think he's doing that. Brenda Jones says, careful, Trump. Greta may end up getting the Peace Prize. Ooh, Trump would be so mad. I almost want to see it, right? That's it, I'm sending troops to Topeka in Greenland. Okay, and I'm sinking fishermen for all over the world. How dare you not give me the prize? Give it to Greta. That would be hilarious. Anyway, Titan says, hey Trump, two-state solution, get an independent state for Palestine. You just have 3 years left. Then I'll lobby for you to get the Nobel Peace Prize very heavily. Fair is shown America, but you got to show results. And so far, nothing. Titan said, I legit thought that video was making fun of Jews. Wow, LOL. They're beyond out of touch with reality. They literally said Jews control everything. They did in some sort of weirdo propaganda video for Israel. I'm like, I mean, I know it's a ridiculous, an outlandish theory, but maybe they are trying to drive up anti-Semitism so they can claim, oh, there's too much anti-Semitism, so that's why we have to take away all American speech rights and no one's ever allowed to criticize Israel again. I don't know, but that was nuts, that video. Crusader of Cuddles wrote back in, Europe, Greta Thunberg is your conscience. Your civilians on the flotilla are writing history while the US writes excuses. Will you shame the warmongers or stay silent? The world is watching. This moment exposes who truly stands for human rights, not Zionist Israel or US politicians. Look, I am encouraged by the world actually taking action. They're beginning to. It's tiny bit, and led by actual human beings. Politicians are always dead last, along with media. Independent Conversation says, I actually really don't have much to say, but got some really unexpected good news on a Monday of all days, and just decided to spread some love to the TYT network and probably do some gift memberships too. It's amazing, thank you for doing that. Look, I read that because guys, it's not like we don't need it. We are besieged at all times by the folks that you know, they're by a lot of different folks. So if you can help, we appreciate it. You could also do subscriptions and donations through tyt.com/join, and we love you for it. Qualcar Coisa Serve says a Brazilian named Monster Pietro is a Muslim who participated in the flotilla and has not yet sent any news since he was captured. Of course, the Israelis don't follow any law. You've got a Jewish American that they won't give news about because they're anti-Semites. All right, we'll be back. All right, guys, Cenk and Anna with you guys. We're back on TYT. It's time for me to ask everybody a poll question because this is a big thing we might do starting on Wednesday. Look, sometimes I'll say like member-only polls are flat out binding. This one is not binding, but I am genuinely curious what you guys think. It is just for the members on tyt.com, so you know it's a weighty question. We only, for the folks who make this show possible, we give you extra voice when we're trying to take action. So we're trying to give you voice on this one. So this is what I'm thinking about doing starting on Wednesday. So we're asking you guys, do you think TYT should use the bonus episode to organize and fight back together against the establishment? Yes, it's time to get organized and take action together. B, not sure yet, I'm open to the idea. C, no, I prefer the traditional bonus episode format. So the reason we're asking you that is because if we go in that direction starting Wednesday, normally bonus episodes just for the members, but we would start making it public. We'd invite left, right, and every concerned American to basically crowdsource the revolution. It's peaceful, nonviolent. I'll explain it on Wednesday if we go in that direction. But I think it could be amazing, and I think this time it could work, and we could bring in a lot of people to do it. But we do normally just reserve that for our members, so that's why we're asking our members, is it okay to open it up to the public so we can try to do this action together to make a difference? So we'll explain more as we go along, but I'd love for you guys to vote on tyt.com. All right, and by the way, if you want to be a member to be able to vote, either hit the join button below on YouTube or tyt.com/join. All right, Anna.
Well, with the Trump administration deploying federalized guardsmen to Democratic cities and all the chaos that's ensuing in Trump's second term, you would think we have some strong political opposition to check the current administration. You'd be mistaken.
New data came out today from KFF, and that is not Kentucky Fried French fries.
That was how Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer cracking a joke as he was doing a press conference. So Schumer was making a painfully unfunny joke during this press conference about the government shutdown. And it got even worse from what you just saw, especially when Schumer looked to Amy Klobuchar for some validation.
How could it get worse?
New data came out today from KFF. And that is not Kentucky Fried French fries. KFF could be Kentucky French fries.
Kaiser family fingers.
I know. Orange. Excuse me.
Please retire. Just please retire and make room for people who are serious about representing the people. So look, as we all know, there's currently a government shutdown. The polls indicate that the majority of the American public are blaming the Republicans for the government shutdown. Democrats are, in the Senate specifically, are essentially unwilling to play ball with Republicans to fund the government unless there's an extension of subsidies for the Affordable Care Act. Without those subsidies, this is insane. Without those subsidies, Americans earning $85,000 a year. So these aren't like low income earners. We're talking about like middle class Americans. Their premiums would double to over $25,000 a year. Who can afford that? No one can afford that. So look, this is actually a very serious issue and it's a serious crisis. Republicans have no interest in helping ordinary Americans pay their premiums for health insurance. Here you have Democrats at least pretending to do so. And I say pretending to do so because I honestly think when it comes to Chuck Schumer in particular, he's worried about a primary challenge from Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. She's certainly looking to run in higher office. But I am curious what you think, Cenk, because I do think what the Democrats are doing in basically holding the government funding bill as leverage in order to get a really important concession from Republicans to help Americans pay for their health insurance. It's a good cause. I agree with the cause. But then you look at the way they conduct themselves, and I'm worried that they're not going to succeed. But maybe I'm wrong. What do you think?
Yeah, well, first of all, I want to talk about the joke because that was quality material by Chucky, right? Kentucky Fried Falafel. Anyone? But my favorite was Amy Klobuchar hanging her head in shame. As he continues to go on and on, you'll see it in a second where she's like, no, please stop. And she just can't look up. Okay, she's like, oh, please move on to Kaiser Family Foundation, please. And then he keeps going, and now watch her head. In shame. You remember Gretchen Whitmer in the White House covering herself with a folder while they were taking the picture? You remember Cory Booker? I think it was with Netanyahu hiding behind the other senators, right? I mean, that's what the Democratic Party has become, this. Hey, so Chuck, I'd leave the comedy to others, please. I'm begging you. Okay, now to the core of it. Hey, look, there's no Democrats fighting for a good thing. Happy to have it, and they do care about Obamacare. Like that's the one thing they've ever done in my lifetime. So they're like, Obamacare. We didn't do anything else, nothing else, but Obamacare. So they might actually fight for it, and then it depends on how the American people are feeling, et cetera. And they're on the side of the American people on this one. So both in terms of policy, you're right, nobody can afford that, especially under these circumstances. How are you gonna have $25,000 for coverage? Then you could buy other kinds of coverage. It makes no sense at all, right? And so I hope that their messaging gets better because it's disastrous now, but that's something they could win on. I mean, you let me run with that message and I'd pound that home until they surrendered. I don't know that they've got that in them. And Democrats normally.
Does it look like they've got that in them, Cenk? They're like approximately 150 years old. Okay, no, look, you're right. It is a worthy cause, and that's what I said as well. I totally agree with it. I do have to just quickly make a point about the fact that, yes, the Democrats, the one thing they have fought for is protecting the Affordable Care Act. So much so that they have pounded and defeated any other healthcare solution that would be far better. And this is the problem. This is the main issue with the Affordable Care Act. You have to buy private insurance and there are no cost controls. So as a result of this flawed healthcare reform that was passed under the Obama administration, the government has no choice but to subsidize the premiums of Americans who have no choice but to buy from private insurers who have a profit motive, and there's no public option in sight. So let's just keep it real about the actual situation right now. You have Democrats fighting tooth and nail through this whole government funding thing in order to continue putting a Band-Aid on a broken healthcare system.
Yeah, overall that's true, but I hope they win on this one. Of course, the problem is in these type of showdowns, the Democratic playbook is not whether we surrender, but when we surrender. So they probably get their caucus together every day. Today, should we surrender today? No, we're waiting one more day. Interesting. But if they don't surrender and they win on this, then I'll say, attaboy, way to protect the American people. Because yes, there's much better options, but realistically, neither Democrats or Republicans are gonna do that because they're like 89% controlled by the donors. I say I've gone low there. You see that? Not above 90. And partly because the donors probably don't want this one either, but Democrats are putting up a little bit of a fight. And I'm gonna feel, slightly hopeful today and say, at least they picked a right topic and at least they're fighting for the moment being. I guess I'll take the win.
Okay, that's fair, that's fair. Now let's go back to making fun of cringy Democrats, because Schumer making a bad joke is just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to the Democrats' sad attempts at being relatable or show that they're fighting back against Republicans. So Hakeem Jeffries, another favorite, did a live stream about the government shutdown on his YouTube channel, featuring a rotating cast of Democratic House members and influencers. At times, it only had a few dozen people watching. Adam Wren from Politico watched 14 hours of it and said the stream featured the feel of a throwback telethon with none of the charisma or surprise, which you should expect from Hakeem Jeffries. So on the stream, Jeffries tried to convey that he and other Democrats are fighting back hard against Trump and Mike Johnson, but as usual, it kind of fell flat. At one point he said, "Y'all, I ain't scared. I'm from Brooklyn. We get down like Shirley Chisholm, unbought and unbossed at all times." Nice.
Okay, first of all, y'all. Is he from the Bronx or is he from Tennessee? What's y'all? And second of all, take Shirley Chisholm's name out of your mouth, okay?
Seriously, seriously.
Shirley Chisholm was an American hero who was actually unbought and unbossed. Hakeem Jeffries is the exact opposite of that. Shirley Chisholm would have relished the fight against Hakeem Jeffries.
I mean, after the 2024 presidential election and the shellacking Democrats suffered, he went to raise money from Silicon Valley CEOs and these tech billionaires. Really, you're gonna talk about how you're unbought? Get out of here. And look, then he invokes a Jay-Z lyric dating back to 2003. Quote, "So Mr. President, allow me to introduce myself. I'm the House Democratic leader." And remember, yeah, whatever, doesn't matter. And then remember back in July, he posted this on Instagram with like this dead look on his face. Like, what is going on? The caption read, "House Democrats will keep the pressure on Trump's one big ugly bill." Did you though? Did you?
Passed easily, super easily.
Yeah.
Okay, so he's like, "Let me reintroduce myself. I'm the House Democratic leader." Trump's response, "And?" Okay, but what are you gonna do about it? Like, are you gonna sit there and bleed all day? Or are you gonna do something? And then he brings the bat. Oh, the bat's my favorite. What are you gonna do with the bat, Hakeem? What are you gonna do with it? Are you gonna hit somebody with it?
It looks like he's gonna fall asleep. Let's take a look at that photo again. Look at him. Look at that sleepy looking face. He looks so bored with what he's doing.
Yeah. Brother, you'd be lucky to play wiffle ball, let alone hardball. Okay, like, come on, I got a bat. What are you gonna do with it? So, total fake tough guys. I love how Charlemagne devastated him with the nickname Apex Shakur. Okay, you like rap? Okay, I don't know if you like that one. And then he tried to fight back with the worst nickname of both. He's like, "Oh yeah, he's Charlatan the fraud." Embarrassing, dude, embarrassing.
Yeah, Jeffries also wrote a letter to House Speaker Mike Johnson challenging him to a debate on the House floor. Johnson rejected and then characterized Jeffries as desperate. Look, I feel bad because obviously the Republican Party, especially with sending federalized guardsmen to blue cities, is up to no good. So it feels kind of gross making fun of the Democrats, but how could you not? How could you not? Because this is the opposition party. These are the people who are supposed to be effectively fighting back against the Trump administration and their bad acts. But it just seems like they don't really have much of a plan, with the exception to what you were saying, Cenk, with the exception of what's currently going down in the Senate and this effort to get the extension for the Affordable Care Act subsidies. I think that might be the one and only example of the Democratic Party fighting back in a way that makes sense. I just think what's really interesting about the optics of it is that while what they're doing is a worthy cause, how about you make room for younger Democrats to do these press conferences? So you don't have this crusty, Senate minority leader looking for validation from Amy Klobuchar after he makes a super dorky, dweeby joke. It's just, we need enthusiastic, young, articulate people making their messages loud and clear. And that's just not what we're getting because these, members of Democratic leadership refuse to make way for younger voices.
So first of all, on him offering the debate, I don't mind that one. I know a lot of people are making fun of him for it, but I don't agree. Fairest show in America. No, I think that's a good move. If I was him, I'd want to debate Mike Johnson, and then I would demand to go all over television and every podcast and say, well, if the brother's not going to show up, I'll make the case. What are they piling on the American people for? They need health care. There's ripping away people's health care to give more tax breaks to Elon Musk, et cetera. Come on, get some, right? But then you got to actually show up and you got to have that strength and you got to prove your case. But I like that he offered the debate. So, but Anna, to your point, it's not like they don't have a young, dynamic congressman who has all these great ideas that are very popular with the American people. His name is Ro Khanna. And I'm not just saying that, guys. He did the Epstein Files press conference, got enormous attention, right? And put pressure on the Republicans. They're reeling and they don't know what to do. They're not letting someone who won a seat in Arizona take their seat because otherwise Ro Khanna's gotten enough Republican votes to expose the Epstein Files, right? So he's taking action. You could put him up front. Another thing that he did, among many, he's sending around a letter to recognize Palestine. That's 92% of Democratic voters want that. So he's representing the overwhelming majority of the Democratic voters. Put him up in a press conference, let him fight, right? But why don't they do that? Because Hakeem Jeffries takes that bat and sits on it when the donors come in and go, shut up and shut Ro Khanna up. You're for Israel. And Aipak Shakur's like, did you give me $2 million? Can you give me $2 million more? By the way, they have given him $2 million. So he doesn't let Ro Khanna do that. Instead, he sits down and defies 90% of his own voters and then looks super weak. And that's why we're not complaining about Democratic policy. We're complaining about Democratic leadership because they never do Democratic policies. Step aside, Butch, and let us fight. All right.
All right.
Bonus episode coming up. Members, you're gonna love it. Oh, actually, this one's public for everyone. Come back, I'm gonna tell you something fun. All right, back on TYT, Cenk, Anna, and all these beautiful people. KG just joined by hitting the join button below. Fat Satter and Lady AF gifted 10 memberships apiece. Amazing. Box gifted 5. That's what I call American heroes. I'm gonna read some comments as we usually do in the bonus episode for that were left over from the show that I enjoyed. And we're gonna get another important story for you guys. But also, in a little bit, I'm going to interview Mike Nellis. So he's got a huge following on Substack. His account's called Endless Urgency. The reason I'm talking to him is we're trying to talk to people from the whole range of the political spectrum, but also especially the Democratic side. So Mike's a little bit more, takes it a little bit easier on the Democratic Party officials. So I'm curious where his head is at these days with party leadership and party policy. So we're going to do that live for everyone in about 25 minutes or so. So stay right here. We got more stories coming up for you guys. Before I get to that, let me do those comments that I mentioned. Mainly YouTube members. Ashanti said, the streets are talking about you, Cenk. Well, look, it's not me, it's the streets. Thank you for noticing, Ashanti. Derek says, we can't ever believe Bibi or Trump. I'm also worried about the Israeli government getting control of TikTok app and the propaganda to come. Well, that one's pretty much set in stone. The IDF soldier is already in charge of hate speech management on TikTok, and that's before the Ellisons even bought it. But TikTok's gonna be gone soon. It's gonna be Israeli propaganda wall to wall. Like they're in a transition now. LL Taco Dragon says, Cenk, give us an of course for the one time, please. Oh, I just did it. Burgundy will read anything in the prompter. Kabir said, Cenk, you're also pretty, my man. Don't be sad. I'm not sad about it, but thank you, brother. I appreciate it. Vis-a-vis Anna, it's a little bit tough, right? But thank you for looking out. Faye Scott Smith says, great, did not deserve being forced to, Greta did not deserve to be forced to kiss the Israeli flag, and I don't care for Greta, but come on, man. I don't know what force on earth can get me to kiss the Israeli flag in the middle of this genocide. So look, I'm not blaming her. They're dragging her around by the hair, according to some reports and witnesses. And I heard the Turkish witness describe it, and so that's what he said. They were doing that. That's one witness, but I don't know. There isn't enough bones in my body you could break to get me to do that.
Agreed.
222. Out of post says, Jenkins short shorts has to be seen.
Hell no!
I mean, but Bart, people are asking for it.
Hell no!
Okay,
no one's asking for this. Like literally no one. Sorry.
Come on.
Although I am a long-legged Mac Daddy. You got that one, Bart?
No.
Rage Rock for now says that segment as a whole on Mar's show was just shameful. It's no coincidence that Bill, I'll talk to anyone, Mar doesn't get Mehdi Hassan or Sagar and Jetty to talk about Gaza, let alone us, right? Like, so I'll tell you real quick. I mean, so if you're not a member, this is the type of stuff we do in the bonus episode from time to time. A little inside baseball. So I've had about half a dozen producers of Bill Maher's show over the last literally 20 years, right? So not that, but like a half a dozen, like literal, right? Come up to me and go, oh my God, you're perfect for real time. Oh God, I'm gonna talk to Bill, we're gonna get you on. In the beginning, I was like, oh, that's kind of cool, and especially because it was a long time ago, right? Now when they say it, I'm like, brother, you're new, right? Go ask him. He ain't gonna do it. So he won't ever have a Muslim on that fights back. Like he's so bigoted against Muslims. The only Muslims he'll have on are people who have promised and literally get paid to kiss Israeli ass. So Mar's an interesting fellow, and I agree with him on a bunch of stuff, and I like his attitude of talking to everyone, but there is a special Muslim exception because he's a bigot. Oh no, I'm not allowed to say that, but you're allowed to call everyone an anti-Semite, right, Bill? Oh, okay. Joe S says, what Israel is doing is a great example of why it's so important, and we ensure this is documented properly in the history books. If it gets taught in schools that they're the good guys, we're lost. Well, that was already taught in schools because the guy publishing our textbooks was Robert Maxwell, legendary Israeli spy. We let him buy the company that publishes those textbooks, after he already stole our nuclear secrets. But no, Israel's not in charge.
McGraw-Hill.
Yeah, Macmillan McGraw-Hill. By the way, we covered that story once, Anna, and people were like, oh, that's an outrageous thing to say. I'm like, accept that it's true. They're like, yeah, it's true, but it's outrageous to say it. Outrageous.
Well, good. Watch the Young Turks for more outrageous truth that offends Israel supporters.
Exactly right. She would do
F
this.
off.
No, this one.
Yeah.
Okay. What am I, Chuck Schumer? Anyways, yes, we do outrageous truth every day. Last couple here. LL Taco Dragon says, I do live paycheck to paycheck and I've just have enough for bills and debt. I haven't saved in like 3 years. It's rough. Brother, you are not alone. 2/3 of the country agrees with you. 0 people in politics do. 0 people in mainstream media do. They don't care about you at all. Edgar Verdi said TYT is always a safe place. Thank you, Edgar. And Randy Fine ate my handle wrote, we don't need a new 2025 horror movie for Halloween. We have the Democratic Party. He wrote patty. I don't know if he meant patty or party or potty. Okay. Anyways, all right, Casper, what's the next story?
All right, yeah, I forgot that Halloween's coming up. Anyway, let's move on to our final story of the day. As authorities investigate the cause of an explosion and subsequent fire at a home belonging to South Carolina Circuit Court Judge Diane Goodstein and former state senator Arnold Goodstein, some Democrats suspect that the Trump administration officials who have been saying all sorts of terrible things about this judge might have something to do with inspiring an attack against the home. Now, let me be absolutely clear. This investigation is ongoing, and so far, authorities have said that there is no evidence to suggest that there's been foul play or arson. However, they are still investigating it. Nonetheless, some of these accusations have led to Stephen Miller melting down, so stay tuned for that. Now, this investigation, again, is ongoing as we speak. Is there a possibility of arson? So far, authorities say they haven't seen any evidence of that, but we're gonna wait until the investigation is finished. Now, prior to the fire, Judge Goodstein had been receiving hundreds of serious threats, including death threats. Before I give you the details on that, any thoughts, Cenk?
I'm worried about it. So when there's a giant fire in the house of someone who's been receiving death threats, you could tell me that you don't have the evidence yet, and I believe you, and maybe it was a coincidence. But my antennas are gonna be up for not a coincidence. So I'm super worried about it.
So there's been a lot made about how, especially after the assassination of Charlie Kirk, all of this rhetoric, all of this vitriol needs to be toned down. What's interesting is that commentary is directed to some on the left, and I agree with it. We need to be very precise and careful with our words. That doesn't mean that we should stop criticizing or critiquing politicians. At the same time, there hasn't really been much said about the violent rhetoric coming from the right. So that's really at the heart of this story and what has led to Stephen Miller melting down. So hop on in, we're gonna take a little bit of a ride and I'm gonna walk you through what's been going on. So, according to local law enforcement, the fire appeared to have been caused by an explosion. Now, Judge Goodstein was luckily not in the home at the time of this explosion and fire. She was apparently out walking her dog, but multiple members of her family, unfortunately, were inside the home, including at least 3 who have been hospitalized with injuries sustained during the fire. So according to South Carolina Chief Justice John Kittredge, Judge Goldstein was walking on the beach when the fire started. Her husband, Arnold as he goes by as well, was in the house with children and perhaps grandchildren. The family had to escape by jumping from a window or balcony. By the way, when the rescue efforts were taking place, the rescuers needed to use kayaks in order to get to the home and rescue the individuals inside. And that's because the home is like on the water and it's hard to get to. Quote, I'm told there were injuries from the fall, such as broken legs. Arnie's injuries may have been the most serious, for he was airlifted to the hospital. So Arnie, again, the husband of the judge, is reported to have multiple broken bones in his hips, legs, and feet due to the fall. The other family member who was reportedly hospitalized with serious injuries was his son, Arnold Goodstein II. Now, let's talk a little bit about why some are suspecting that this could have been the product of foul play, possibly arson. Again, I'm going to repeat again, there's no evidence of that yet. And there may never be any evidence of that. However, the DOJ had apparently sought the information, including names, addresses, driver's license numbers, and social security numbers of over 3 million registered voters as part of President Donald Trump's March executive order restricting non-citizens from registering to vote, which, again, there's no evidence that that's something that's taking place anyway. But the judge stepped in and essentially blocked the DOJ from accessing the information of the voters from the state. So her decision ended up getting criticized by Assistant Attorney General for Civil Rights, Harmeet Dillon. And the judge's decision was also later reversed by the state's Supreme Court. But the damage had already been done in the eyes of Trump administration officials, in addition to Trump supporters. So in her ruling, Goodstein had stated that handing over this sort of data would cause immediate and irreparable damage by violating people's right to privacy, something I actually agree with. But at the time, Dillon, Harmeet Dillon, who was nominated by Trump, slammed her ruling and posted on X that the Justice Department's civil rights will not stand for a state court judge's hasty nullification of our federal voting laws. I will allow nothing to stand in the way of our mandate to maintain clean voter rolls. One citizen, one vote. Now, I want to be clear, even though I disagree with Dillon, I don't see anything wrong with that post in terms of inciting violence or anything like that. And then judge temporarily blocks South Carolina from giving millions of voters data to DOJ. But even more recently, literally a day before this fire occurred, Stephen Miller, who is the deputy chief of staff, targeted federal judges in general who rule against Trump in a social media post. So he wrote the following: "The issue before is now before us. The issue before us now is very simple and clear. There is a large and growing movement of left-wing terrorism in the country. It is well organized and funded, and it is shielded by far left Democrat judges, prosecutors, and attorneys general. The only remedy is to use legitimate state power to dismantle terrorism and terror networks." So obviously that type of rhetoric makes it appear as though judges who rule against the Trump administration are essentially providing cover for terrorists in the country. And in regard to this judge's ruling against Trump, essentially attempting to block him from accessing the voter rolls, there were people who have some pretty decent followings on social media posting all sorts of, in my opinion, violent things. So one user with over 11,000 followers replied, quote, "Rain holy hellfire onto these judges who interfere with the executive branch." Obviously not understanding how our system of government works, how we're supposed to have a system of checks and balances. So you don't have an executive branch that gets drunk on power and is never mitigated or checked by other branches of government, including the judicial branch. Now, the next day before the fire, the next day, hours before the fire, Stephen Miller accused another judge, US District Judge Karen Emmergut, of legal insurrection over her blocking the National Guard being deployed by the Trump administration to Portland. New York Congressman Daniel Goldman pressed Miller on the incident over the weekend, saying Trump, Stephen Miller, and MAGA have been doxing and threatening judges who rule against Trump, including Judge Goldstein. Today, someone committed arson. He shouldn't have said that because there's no evidence of that right now, but nonetheless, committed arson on the judge's home, severely injuring her husband and son. Will Trump speak out against the extreme right that did this? So that led to Stephen Miller getting really upset. And to be honest with you, Cenk, I actually agree with getting upset because you're kind of making claims that are unfounded at the moment. There is still no evidence confirming that this was a product of arson. And you're blaming this on the extreme right when there's no evidence supporting that claim. Like, don't do that. So I'll get to Stephen Miller's response to that in just a minute. But what do you make of all of this?
Yeah, so I'm lie where you are. So first, look, it's logical to think that it might be someone who was egged on by the Stephen Miller types and was a right winger who targeted the judge. Like when we didn't know who the Charlie Kirk shooter was, there was logic in saying that it might be someone on the left. But you have to add in, but we don't know because we literally didn't catch the guy in either case, right? So Goldman is being too presumptuous there. I'm not sure that's exactly the right word, but he's presuming too much there. So I agree with you on Harmeet Dillon too. So that line, I will allow nothing to stand in the way of our mandate to maintain clean voter rolls. No, that's normal politics. Look, I don't want the kind of violent imagery. I don't want us being pitted against one another as enemies, etc. But it's a very common political saying, so I wouldn't worry about that one at all. But when you get to Stephen Miller, that's where we have the real problem. So this constant talk of calling the left terrorists. Now, the minute they start calling people internally terrorists, we're in a lot of trouble, okay? Because I don't mean the left wing, I mean the country. Because then we're gonna call everybody terrorists, and terrorist is the most misused word in the English language. And it basically means someone I don't quite like. And so, but if they're a terrorist, you could murder them. So it's just the world's worst word. Used inside the country is an epic disaster. And then this whole talk of legal insurrection, like bring it down, bring it down. That's so like they say, oh, when you criticize the right, oh, you're increasing the temperature, you gotta bring down the temperature. And then they go around going, get terrorists, legal insurrection, right? No, that's crazy talk. And then when you go extra mile and you go, now these terrorists are being shielded by Democratic judges. You're almost putting in there, isn't someone gonna do something about it? And
yeah,
so,
that's where I land on this, right? I think what's good for the goose is good for the gander. So if you are going to demand that the left tone down its rhetoric, how about you take a good look and reassess the kind of communications coming out of the Trump administration, because it's winding people up, making people scared. And yes, I think it's encouraging people who might be unhinged to take matters in their own hands. You need to have agreement on both sides of the political aisle to do what's right and not smear the other side as dangerous or terrorists. And when it comes to judges, that's especially the case because here, I'm gonna fast forward to graphic 9 here, where these threats against judges have definitely been on the rise. Chief Judge for the District of Rhode Island, Jack McConnell, told NPR in August that his court has received more than 400 threatening voicemails, including several credible death threats. McConnell had issued a ruling blocking Trump's freeze on federal aid earlier this year. So every time a federal judge does his or her job and weighs in on something that Trump is doing and decides to rule against it, you have this like angry response from Trump administration officials that winds people up and makes them think, oh, the judicial branch is the enemy. No, federal judges are supposed to do what federal judges do, which is weigh in on the legality or constitutionality of the actions being taken by the executive branch. And the executive branch has the right to appeal those decisions, as the Trump administration has been doing. And let's just be 100% real. The federal courts have passed down all sorts of decisions that I have hated, that I've loathed. I don't then come out and say, these people are defending terrorists and terrorism. I'm not gonna put a target on their backs because I might not agree with their rulings, but this is how our system of government works. And if you're wondering just how often the federal courts have needed to weigh in on some of what Trump has been up to, as of October, Trump has issued over 300 executive orders, proclamations, and memoranda. Between May 1st and June 23rd, federal district courts blocked Trump's actions with temporary restraining orders or preliminary injunctions around 94% of the time. And that's according to data that was analyzed by Adam Bonica, an associate professor of political science at Stanford University, while the Supreme Court reversed those orders in close to 94% of its cases.
Yeah, Anna, to your point, I don't know that there's anybody in the country who dislikes a Supreme Court opinion more than I dislike Citizens United. So I think it destroyed our democracy, along with Bellotti and Buckley v. Vallejo, which were earlier Supreme Court decisions. But that doesn't mean we should go attack the Supreme Court like a bunch of weirdos. And by the way, that would be very un-American. So what do you do then? Well, first of all, okay, you lost a Supreme Court decision. It's called sad day for you. So then what you do is you fight back politically. So if you lose a Supreme Court decision, that one is very hard to overcome. All right, well then put your boots on and let's overcome it. And so the way you do that in that particular case is a constitutional amendment. So that's why I started Wolfpack, wolf-pack.com, now fightcorruption.us, right? So there is a way to do it, there's a pathway to do it, and we will eventually do it. But you handle it that way, not through weirdo anger and like, they're shielding terrorists, do something. No, don't do that. Yeah, do something, pass an amendment, be an American, fight back politically, use our democracy. Lastly, because we're the fairest show in America, Stephen Miller did put in a line there for plausible deniability. Anna did read it to you, but I'm going to highlight it again anyway. So after he got everybody all riled up about their shielding terrorists and etc., he did write in, the only remedy is to use legitimate state power to dismantle terrorism and terror networks, right? So first of all, the judges are not part of terror networks, but he did say the only remedy is legitimate state power. Since we're fair, I'm reiterating that for you.
Yeah, I'm glad you did that, and it's important. So that's it. That's all we've got for you.
Okay, so hold. I have a couple of last things here, as I usually do. First off, I'm going to read two last quotes that I liked here. Don't shoot on the goalkeeper from TYT.com membership said, "All Jews are Israelis, my ass," referring to one of the propaganda videos that the 7,000 Club was putting out. That kind of trash message is what's driving up anti-Semitism.
Agreed.
Couldn't agree more.
Yeah, and I can't stand it. I can't stand it. I can't stand the intentional conflation of the secular nation state of Israel with all Jews worldwide. It's gross. It's a way of trying to silence critics of Israel and what they're currently up to. But on top of that, what it does is it directs anti-Semitism and hate toward Jewish people who absolutely do not deserve that. And by the way, many of them do not agree with what Israel is currently carrying out.
Yeah, so it's using Jews as human shields so that Israel can't be attacked, right? So it's a really cheap, dirty trick. And you guys, you know what's gonna happen. If folks get riled up and it starts to go in the wrong direction, what are we gonna do? We at the Young Turks, we're gonna stand up for Jewish Americans and Jews across the world. So then we're gonna have to fight back those guys to protect our Jewish brothers and sisters. So
I have no problem doing that at all.
100%. And so either way though, but this thing seesaws, and the thing that's causing it is both the same, which is this deeply evil is current Israeli government that is both doing terrible things, so we have to all fight to save Palestinian lives. And then as we fight that fight, we do it well rhetorically and politically, and then they go, okay, we'll hide behind Jewish people and say, all Jews are doing this. If you don't like genocide, you're criticizing Jewish people. Don't do that, because then we have to turn around and defend Jewish people from the anti-Semitism you're creating, right? So they're so disgusting in that government, filled with terrorists. So that, and so sometimes, by the way, some Jewish Americans who still love Israel, etc., will say, you don't get to speak for all Jews. No, but brother, you don't speak for all Jews either. I know. Nope. I was at a caravan in Chicago last night, and Jewish Voices for Peace was there. One of the top lawyers for the Council on American Islamic Relations is a Jewish American, right? So no, not even close. A giant number of Jewish Americans are not on board for this genocide. So so the Israeli government's hurting in both directions. Last comment. Eclectic Miscellaneous said, we should bring back to donating $1 for every dad joke. That would have been $3 a person just on Cenk and Anna's jokes on tatas for Israel. But would encouraging more dad jokes be a good thing? We should probably do it. Well, I don't know about that. Maybe we should do a poll on it, okay?
Okay, the highlight of today's show was you squeezing your chest together. Like that was
pecs, please.
Your pecs. I can't.
Okay, so guys, we did a live bonus episode today, right? So for everybody, we're doing it because we got Mike Nellis interview, and these interviews, they're that we're doing to get a sense of where the Democratic Party stands. A lot of you written in saying you love it. That's great. Mike's huge on Substack, so stay here. We're gonna talk to him in a couple of minutes. But meanwhile, it's relevant because I wanted to remind you guys on tyt.com, for the members, we have a poll. Do you think TYT should use the bonus episode to basically organize the internet and fight back together against the establishment? Yes, it's time to get organized and take action together. Not sure yet. And no, I prefer the traditional bonus episode format. And you wonderful people are, of course, are saying, no, let's organize the internet. All right, but we'll keep it going. And on Wednesday, we might begin to do that. So start to tell your, your cousins, your aunts, your uncles, Young Turks is coming. And we would do that at 8 o'clock Eastern after the traditional 2-hour show. And all right, I'll save the rest for another day. Anna's gonna be on CNN at 10 o'clock Eastern tonight, Abby Phillips show. So make sure you're checking it out. Anna, good luck, go get them. And
thank you.
When we come back, Mike Nellis, which way should the Democratic Party go? Let's have a real conversation and maybe a debate about it. We'll see. All right, we'll come right back. All right, interesting interview for you guys within the Democratic Party. Mike Nellis runs Endless Urgency, huge on Substack. He's also senior advisor to Vice President Kamala Harris before she became vice president. So that should be an interesting conversation. Helped Adam Schiff, Gretchen Whitmer, John Tester, and Lauren Underwood win. Has raised over $1 billion for online campaigns and causes. That is a big number. Mike, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yeah, no problem. So Mike, I want to talk about the state of the Democratic Party, take your perspective on it, having worked with some of the folks on the establishment side of the Democratic Party. So first though, tell us a little bit about Endless Urgency. What do you do there?
Yeah, so Endless Urgency is my Substack that I launched about 4 or 5 months ago. We've got over 1 million subscribers. Basically brought it online because I want to close the distance between Democratic staffers, consultants, and that conversation, and really start to have a conversation with Democratic activists and progressive activists that are out there, because way too many of my colleagues are not touching grass and talking to regular people. And I also got a little bit frustrated every time I turned on CNN or Fox News or MSNBC and I'd see a Democratic strategist who would be telling me how to win elections, and I'd never heard of them before, which seemed a bit of a problem to me. So we're having a ton of guests. We go live every day at 5 o'clock Eastern. Had Malcolm Kenyatta on today, which was a great conversation. Had Stephanie Miller on earlier today, who I believe you know. Yep. And so it's a great opportunity to just have a conversation about news of the day and the state of the Democratic Party.
All right, sounds good. I love conversation. That's why this is called a conversation. This particular show on TYT. All right,
good branding.
Thank you. All right, so how is it working with Kamala Harris?
She was great. I worked with her for 5 years. I was a senior advisor on her presidential campaign. So for those who don't know, I was responsible for building, along with a great team of people, her digital apparatus. So I built her online fundraising. I built her social media, along with a lot of other really awesome people. She was, in my opinion, one of the nicest, smartest people that I ever worked with. She was tough. I used to joke with people, if you've ever seen the clip of her grilling Jeff Sessions when she was on the Senate Judiciary Committee, that was the only time I found him relatable, because I knew what it was like to kind of come in and do my quarterly digital report and have her ask like the right tough questions and see right through any BS I put in the report. But she was really great. And I think she's an incredible leader. And I was a better business owner and strategist and human being for the time I got to spend with her.
Okay, that is very complimentary of her. I have a slightly different opinion of her, but that's partly because she lost the election. So if she was that good a leader, why'd she lose, Mike?
Well, she was put in the worst position of any presidential nominee in American history. And I'm not going to sit here and tell you that she ran a perfect campaign. I think when you hear people who say that, they're ridiculous. But she had 107 days to run a campaign. She was put in a terrible position by Joe Biden and his inner circle. I think what the biggest mistake that we made, if you look at the 2 times we lost to Donald Trump, it was because we didn't have full, vibrant Democratic primaries. And I worked for Bernie in 2016 and was very proud of the campaign that I got to be a small part of. But we should have had a much more vibrant Democratic Party then, because we would have, one, nominated a better candidate, which isn't to say that Hillary Clinton wouldn't have won that primary or that Kamala wouldn't have won in 2024. It's just that going through that primary process makes you a stronger candidate, builds you a stronger campaign. And if you don't rise to the moment, somebody else does, which I think sets the Democratic Party up in a stronger position. So that's what we need to make sure happens in 27 and 28.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with you that we need strong primaries. Although I don't believe Kamala Harris would have won a primary, but okay, let's talk about the establishment, because we say it kind of generically. And so to us in the progressive camp, I'm gonna say super loosely, but we're trying to have a conversation here and figure things out together. Kamala Harris, Joe Biden, half a dozen in one, 6 in the other. Like, I can't really tell the difference. So is there a difference, and what's the difference?
Well, I think Kamala didn't get an opportunity to establish that difference. Also, if you read her book and if you listen to her talk about it, like, she didn't feel like she could separate herself from Joe Biden in the campaign. I mean, he put a lot of pressure on her. So I think if she had had more time, she could have done it. But you're right that we talk about the establishment in the zeitgeist. And one way that I kind of frame this for people is we do need a new generation of Democratic leadership. And you hear that with people shouting about Chuck Schumer and shouting about Hakeem Jeffries. And some of that is fair and some of it I think isn't. And we can get into all of that. But there's a broader generational issue that needs to happen in the party too, which is we need new talking heads. We need new influencers. We need new candidates up and down the ballot. We need new consultants. We need new staff. We need new legislators. And I think there's a staleness to the party that is permeating everywhere. And I describe it to everybody like this: like, when you lose to Donald Trump for a second time, we're basically living the early 80s SNL where Lorne Michaels fired everybody and you have to prove that you're Eddie Murphy. Otherwise you need to go. And I don't even know if I get to stay, to be honest with you. I'm not gonna presume that I do, but we got a lot of change that we gotta make and a lot of fixes. And it comes from the moderate wing of the party, the establishment wing of the party, the left wing of the party. It's all of us right now because we all lost together.
Yeah, but okay. So I can't help but say this. I'm just a quick tangent and then I can get to the main point. You said she wrote in her book that she couldn't, get past Joe Biden because he'd be mad or something. But if you're running for leader, you can't say I couldn't, right? You either do or you don't. And so,
well, I can understand the loyalty. Like I understand the loyalty. Obviously, it was a political mistake, which she acknowledges now. But I get it from a loyalty perspective.
Okay, look, I love loyalty, but first of all, Joe Biden did not warrant the loyalty, and second of all, losing to Trump is a little bit more important than loyalty to a guy who was dementia riddled and decided to run anyway, right? Which was so incredibly arrogant and narcissistic. So, I mean, you burn your loyalty bridge when you pull something like that, in my opinion. Okay, but back to the main point. So, Mike, yeah, but you say like progressives and the mainstream or establishment folks, and we all have the onus on us. Great, love it. Where do we get together to have that conversation in a fair way? Because I've never had that conversation with the Democratic Party that was fair. It was always the establishment laying down the rules and telling everybody how they were geniuses and they know exactly what to do. And we should all bow our heads. And whatever, like every once in a while, they'll be like, okay, progressives, we'll let you introduce one or two things. I mean, we're not promising we're gonna do them and secretly we'll throw them under the bus later, but am I not merciful? No, you're not merciful. And especially at this point, when the establishment has beclowned itself and lost to Trump twice, isn't it fair for us to say, hey, maybe you guys take a seat in the back and where do we have a forum where we can figure out how much you guys suck or you don't suck, but let's have that conversation and you tell us why you're so amazing and would ever earn our trust again. I've never seen it. All I've ever seen is the establishment Democrats beat the crap out of progressives, outsiders, populists by using mainstream media to smear them. So, and it's a real question, Mike, and you don't represent the establishment, but you've worked with people, so you have a little bit better insight into it than I do, right? So like, can we actually have that conversation in the Democratic Party when we've never been able to have it before?
Yeah, well, I think we need to have that conversation. I want to give a little bit of context to anybody who hasn't been introduced to me. So I've been working in Democratic politics for 2 decades now. I've worked for a lot of big name establishment folks, Kamala Harris being the biggest one of those. But I've also worked for a ton of upstart progressive challengers, especially in the first half of my career. I worked for a ton of progressive challengers that people don't remember anymore, like Alan Grayson and Elaine Marshall and a whole bunch of others. Patsy Keever is one that I remember who I loved and ran in just an uphill battle against an establishment candidate in a primary.
But Alan Grayson, congressman with guts. I remember.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. I think the play, like one, just very broadly, I think that you are right that there are a lot of people in the establishment who presume that they know better. And I don't think that that's always right. I tend to approach most conversations thinking that I try to listen like I'm wrong is the way that I phrase it. And a lot of times, because I have the same problem that any political consultant does, I assume I'm right about everything. But I try to approach it like I'm not. So I think one, we have to just have tough conversations and have those conversations in good faith. Like, I don't think the fact that, actually I would frame it this way, is I often talk about the size of the Democratic Party tent being from Zohran Mamdani to Joe Walsh. And I'm okay with that right now because we're in a really tough moment where the political stars are realigning and we got to figure out how to get to 50% plus one, enough to win in a system that's frankly rigged against us, whether you're a moderate or an independent. So there's that. I think the second place to do it is primaries. And I think that the Democratic Party, particularly on the establishment side, is afraid of Democratic primaries. And I think primaries are good. Like, it sharpens the party, it sharpens the candidate, it develops new tools and technology, it develops new staff. Like, I think it's good. Like, I look at the Michigan primary, I'm excited that there's a full vibrant primary with what is gonna be 3 fully funded candidates. There's gonna be a lot of good stuff that comes out of that, even if my candidate doesn't win or your candidate doesn't win or whatever. That's still good for the party, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, primaries, I love them, can't get enough of them. So like, if a more moderate voice wins in a primary, then they won, God bless, all right? Look, I would take all the super PAC money out of a primary, make it fair and even and more representative of the voters, but still, I'll take it in any form. But so my question is back to them though. Do you think that they're gonna really let us have fair primaries? I mean, I think probably at the Senate and congressional level, other than AIPAC bringing a ton of money and the DNC cheering wildly for it, it'll probably be relatively fair. The one I'm worried about is the presidential primary in 2028. We haven't had a fair one in, I don't know, my lifetime, I think. No, back in '88 when Gore and Biden and all those guys were running, maybe '92. Anyways, so can we actually get a fair one? Is that too much to ask for? And what I'm asking Mike specifically is, what's the vibe you're getting from DNC and Democratic establishment people? Do they get that they need to allow fair primaries, or are still scheming behind the scenes? Oh no, we'll just get Jake Tapper and Stephanopoulos to say that you don't need primaries and then we'll be great.
So I want to push back on a couple things real quick, just a couple areas of disagreement. Like, I disagree with the idea that we haven't had a fair Democratic presidential primary in your lifetime. I think, if nothing else, 2008 was absolutely a fair Democratic primary. But I'll also, like, for 2016, I was on Bernie Sanders in 16. Do I think that there were decisions that were made that were unfair? I do, but Bernie Sanders lost that primary fair and square. And I say that even though I really wanted him to win. In 2024, or excuse me, in 2019 and 2020, a lot of the Democratic establishment didn't want Joe Biden to be the nominee. The voters chose Joe Biden, not the establishment.
No, Mike, don't do
yes. That. I would say that as one person who has a foot firmly in establishment lane. I'm also in progressive lane on a lot of stuff. A lot of people did not want Joe Biden. And I think the idea that the DNC just picked him is wrong. I really do. Now, 100%. You could argue that some of the things they did for 2023 and 24 were wrong, the way they rejiggered the map. I understand that criticism. That is fair. But it was a fair fight in 2019 and 2020. We just lost.
Oh, wait, 2020 or 2024?
2020. 2024, they moved the primary map so that it would be impossible to beat Joe, and that was wrong.
Okay, all right. Oh, all right. Sorry, I misheard you. So first,
no, I meant 19 and 20. It was like a lot of people didn't want Joe. Yeah. We thought somebody else would be good. Like some people thought Pete, I thought Kamala, et cetera. But like we just couldn't. The voters chose.
No. Okay, yeah. Then we largely agree. So first of all, when I say my lifetime, that's hyperbole. You're right. No, and 2008. Like it turned out Obama was also establishment and they tricked us, but it's okay. It was a real primary, and I was on Obama's side, and Obama won, and it was like it seemed miraculous. And no, that was a real primary. So no, the real problems were in 2016 and 2024, right? I think 2020 was a relatively real primary. Yeah, no, totally real, because they coalesced at the end. Right after South Carolina, Obama called everybody and said, "Get out of the race. We all have to." Get together behind Biden so the evil Bernie Sanders can't win. So that's Barack Obama's fault. That's Democratic leadership's fault. But it was, that's politics. That's not unfair. That's not rigging anything.
That's the same thing as like you brought up the super PACs, right? Like I would love to get super PACs out of primaries. I absolutely hate them. Like I hate that AIPAC spends so much money. I hate that crypto spends so much money. But like that's politics. And as people like to, I remember when Ro Khanna and a couple members of Congress were calling on the DNC to ban super PAC money in the primaries. The DNC can't do that. They don't have any legal authority to do that. They could pass a resolution saying you shouldn't do that, but they can't stop it from happening. My thing is the advice that I've given to others in the left, a lot of folks that you and I both know, is you're gonna have to come up with your solution to super PAC spending. In some ways, the way that Bernie Sanders does his fundraising distributively to other candidates is a bit of the answer to that. They just haven't been able to do it at the same scale as a lot of the big super PACs can. So if you want to win, you're going to have to solve for that because the FCC isn't going to do it, Congress isn't going to do it, and the DNC can't do it.
Yeah, okay, two disagreements on this conversation. So on the super PACs, okay, I hear what you're saying about legally they can't say no super PAC, but they could say no, super PACs are disfavored. And so if you use a super PAC, you're going outside of our rules. It's not a law, but it's outside of our rules. And so the presumption should be that people should vote against you because you're trying to cheat by bringing in big money. And we know that when you bring in big money like that, you're gonna serve those guys. I've never seen anybody get money from a super PAC and not vote exactly as the super PAC wants them to vote. So I'm not interested in those corrupt politicians. And yeah, you're right, Mike. That we might be able to do a rebellion, a revolution, et cetera, within the Democratic Party and get people to vote in the primaries and say vote against incumbents who take super PACs. It's very difficult. We'll have to do it without any mainstream media help because they'll be the ones attacking us. But overall, yeah, it would definitely be more fair if they banned super PACs in the primaries as a rule, not a law, right? And then on 2016.
Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt. There's a bit of a delay, but if you do that, the average voter isn't paying enough attention to it. That's actually part of the problem. Is what AIPAC does that's pretty smart is they spend a bunch of money, but they don't spend it on their issues. They spend it on other things that are vulnerabilities on the candidates. So again, the DNC could pass every resolution on the planet. And by the way, you said the DNC like cheers it on. I don't think that's an accurate description of certainly what Ken Martin would do at the DNC. We disagree. But again, the left, if they want to win these elections, is going to have to come up with an answer for that. Just the political reality of it. I don't quite have it. I've worked on plenty of races where I wish I had enough money for that candidate to have won. So like I feel you on this.
Look, Ken Martin's a mixed bag, and jury's out on Ken Martin. And I know that in the past he has been on the side of, not trying to give the super PACs an unfair advantage. But the DNC before Ken Martin traditionally has been super PAC central. They love super PACs. And anytime you suggest that to just take him out of the primaries, you're not doing unilateral disarmament against the Republicans, they lose it. And the reason they lose it is because the people running the DNC are the ones who are corrupt. They're the ones who got there through politicians who take super PAC money. So that's why they're in favor of the corrupt. I mean, bringing us back to 2016, and then we'll go to the future again, but last thing on the past. In 2016, Mike, nobody rigged the votes, right? So people really wanted us to say that people rigged the votes and we wouldn't do it, and a lot of people got mad at us. I've never seen any evidence for that, so I'm not talking about that. But did the DNC egg on mainstream media to say that Hillary Clinton had this huge lead with the superdelegates when the superdelegates actually vote at the end and not at the beginning? So it's an optical trick to make it seem like she was the presumptive favorite. And did mainstream media all lie on her behalf in playing to that trick? Absolutely. But even more importantly, when you're talking about actual like hard power the DNC has, they got donors to funnel money to the state parties, and then they funneled that to Hillary Clinton against Bernie Sanders, and that was a massive violation of their own rules. So they definitely cheated to help Hillary.
So the only pushback I would have here is that, one, I think the hard power that the Democratic Party establishment, quote unquote, such as it exists, is a lot less than people think that it is. It's a lot less than the perception of it is. Just saying as somebody who's worked on a ton of races, both successfully and unsuccessfully. But the other thing here is like on superdelegates, like superdelegates was unfair. It just was unfair, but it was the rules at the time. It was the same rules roughly that Barack Obama had to deal with to overcome Hillary Clinton 8 years prior. So I don't think it's a dirty trick for Hillary Clinton to round up all those endorsements based on the system that had already been written, that had been established for a long time, and Bernie's inability to cut through that. They got rid of superdelegates after that, which is actually really great. But I would argue it made it easier for Joe Biden to win 4 years later, excuse me.
No, but that's okay as long as it's fair, right? And so
yeah, I think it's more fair without the superdelegates. I'm hope that they won't bring anything like that back. I don't think they will.
Yeah, I just want the audience to realize what I'm saying because I don't want miscommunication. So the superdelegates, yes, that was the lay of the land back then, but they voted at the end of the process, not at the beginning. So when Hillary Clinton put out, hey, I'm winning 438 to nothing, CNN is the primary culprit in New York Times and all those outlets because they printed it as if it was true, and it wasn't true. It was 0-0 in the beginning. So they could say,
I disagree with you on that, because if somebody's got the endorsement and says they're voting for Hillary Clinton,
people switch all the time.
I think it's fair.
They switch from Hillary to Obama like crazy in 2008.
Did they switch from Hillary to Bernie though? Because they didn't. I wish that they had.
But okay, so they didn't, but they easily could have. And putting that in the column, I get why Hillary does it. It's a nice little political trick. But the DNC playing along, the mainstream media playing along was totally unfair. Oh no, she's already won. She's got all these delegates, 438 to nothing. We haven't even voted yet. What are you talking about, right? And they haven't voted.
I just think that's politics. If I'm giving like tough advice, because like, look, there's plenty of progressive and left candidates I want to win because they believe they're the better option, or I believe they care a lot more than the establishment candidate, which is something that matters to me. But I think the tough advice I would give the left sometimes is like they're complaining about things that are like rules or maybe slightly unfair, that it's just politics. And like, that isn't to say that it's okay, but like, you can't change that. Like, I think it is pretty reasonable for Hillary Clinton to go, I have 500 superdelegate votes, so I'm ahead 500 to nothing. Like, to me, in the context of the game that's being played in politics, and politics shouldn't be a game, but it is, that's a reasonable move for her to make. In the same way that if like 50 of those delegates broke off and went to Bernie, he'd go, hey, I just cut Hillary Clinton, I just cut the lead by 50 superdelegate votes. So yeah, I just feel like it's that's pretty fair to me. That's not the DNC like rigging the game, right?
See, this is why I love these conversations, why we need these conversations where we agree, disagree, have honest conversations. Because look, they weren't votes, they were delegates, but I'll agree with you completely that you got to get past it, right? Okay, so one way of getting past it is say, hey, it's unfair, we're going to change the rules, etc., and you fight your fight on that. But then more importantly, get past it in the media so you can win the votes, right?
Yeah.
And so and Bernie was too soft, and that's been my critique of him throughout all of these. So if I was Bernie in 2016, I would have gone on CNN and say, why don't you guys stop lying already? And they were like, oh, how could you say that? But they're delegates that endorsed, they didn't vote yet. When do they vote? Brian Stelter, Jake Tapper, when do they vote? Oh, they vote months from now. They vote 6 months from now. So can you correct that graphic? Your graphic is ridiculous and meant to get people to think that Hillary Clinton has already won. You're helping her, right? So that's a rhetorical thing you could have done, but Bernie didn't do it because he's soft. So I agree with Mike that if you want to win and you're on the left, yeah, complain through the right channels because it's your party and that's part of the system as well. But mainly go fight back and win. Right? So, all right, now let's go to the future. You said, primary is a good place to, sort this out. And then the Democratic Party is a little bit more open, has to be a little bit more open to new talking heads, etc. So that's another place where we're gonna have an issue, right? So like if I went to Ken Martin today and I said, okay, brother, unleash me, okay? Let me be a Democratic spokeswoman. That was a fun Freudian slip. Okay, you wouldn't want that.
Okay, careful. A lot of people online are gonna claim you're transitioning now. The MAGA world's gonna go nuts.
No one on earth wants that. Okay, anyways.
Somebody does. Statistically speaking, somebody does.
Well, that's true. That's true. A bear of some sort. Okay, anyways. So
no kink shaming on the young Turks.
No, none. We're progressive. But if I went to them and I said, okay, let me be a spokesperson and kick some ass, they'd be like, whoa, no. We need carefully tailored, consultant approved, highly edited talking point machine, dude, not you. It doesn't feel like the Democrats have the leadership, the party has any soul or life in them. It feels like they're so robotic assembly line. And if you try to inject them with a little bit of life, they'd be like, no. Okay, am I seeing it wrong?
Well, I think we have a lot of people who are way too scared of their own shadow. And I think they're trying to not offend anybody. They're trying to get everything like perfectly calibrated. And it's a lot of politics by subtraction instead of politics by addition. And I'm tired of that. I mean, you've seen my show, you've seen me on social media. I'm pretty raw and unfiltered, and I say the wrong thing plenty of times. I'm fine with that. I mean, to be clear, the DNC doesn't put me out here. Like, they didn't book me on the show. I think there's sometimes a misnomer that like the DNC is booking me on Fox News to argue with Jesse Waters. It isn't how it works. But we do not have enough people that I think have a clarity of voice and a clarity of what they believe in that they can get on TV and go have a conversation. Like, I get asked all the time, how can you go argue with Jesse Waters? How can you go argue with Leland Vittert and the rest of them? Is like, I believe what I believe in. Like, I'm not playing a character. I'm not checking my DNC talking points in the morning and deciding what I believe in. So we need more people that are gonna do that. And we especially need more people who could do that, who can run for office. And I think, say what you will about the Republicans, say what you will about Trump, and I don't like any of them for the most part. They take risks and they're bold and they're interesting. And I think it's worse to be boring right now than it is to like make a mistake every now and then. People will forgive you for making a mistake. So it is getting a lot better. I'll say it's dramatically better than it was a year ago. If we compound that a year from now, we might be in a good spot.
I like your hope. Normally I'm in the hope business, okay? But
I'm a joyful warrior. I borrowed that from Kamala Harris. The one thing I carry with me.
Hey,
if I was to get a tattoo, I'd probably put it like right here.
We do Operation Joy on the Young Turks. That's on Tuesdays. And I am a warrior, so I'm all in for Joyful Warrior. But okay, so you mentioned last thing here, I think, for now, but we're gonna have so many more conversations going forward. Yeah. So you mentioned Zoran Mamdani to Joe Walsh. For those who don't remember, Joe Walsh used to be a Tea Party Republican. He's become a Democrat now. So obviously, and a lot of his philosophy is still conservative, which I respect. I respect Joe Walsh. He was, intellectually honest enough to say, look, I made a mistake. Those years in the Tea Party were wrong in a lot of ways. So great, happy to have you, brother. And Zoran, yeah, the voters voted for him. So that's it, period. And a discussion for me. But that leads to the last question, which is, yes, but Mike, if you have a Zoran type person that, and I'm not as left as Zoran is on the economic stuff, right? Rent control's a little misguided. I care deeply about housing prices. I'm not sure rent control's the way to go. We can go debate that, et cetera, but that's not my point. My point is, if you had someone who's not quite as economically left as Zoran, but is a real populist and actually wants to get all the things passed, including money out of politics, et cetera, is kind of a barn burner guy who's a little rough around the edges, and is for cutting Israel's funding. My guess is that the entire Democratic machinery would go, honest primary. No way. No, everybody unite. We must defeat that guy. Am I wrong? Is it a new Democratic Party that wouldn't do that?
I mean, if it were for president, I don't think anybody would run away from that candidate. But I do think what's happening in New York right now is not right, which is that Zoran won the primary, and there are a lot of people who still haven't endorsed him, up to and including the chair of the New York Democratic Party. And I think that's a mistake. And my view of this is I've been in a lot of primaries where I loved the progressive candidate that I worked for, and they lost. And then I moved on and everybody else moved on, and we supported and rallied behind the moderate establishment backed candidate. If you're gonna ask people to do that when the left candidate loses, you have to do that when the moderate candidate loses, when the centrist candidate loses. Otherwise, you create a permission structure that tells a lot of progressives, whoa, why would I get involved? I'm just gonna give up. It is more important to defeat the Republican. And in this case, it's more important to make sure that Andrew Cuomo doesn't get elected as mayor of New York City. So I don't think it's right for anybody to not be rallying behind it. And it's okay to say, look, I have disagreements with Zoran. I'm with you. I'm not as far to the left as Zoran is on a lot of issues, but I see the guy for the benefits that he's bringing to the race, the passion that he has, the energy that he brought a lot of new people into the party. That's nothing to sneeze at. So I want to win that race. So I live in Chicago, so nobody cares what I think in New York, but he has my support, and I think that's my responsibility as a Democrat. Democratic voters voted for him.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. So, okay, follow up to that last question. But any hint that they're getting it, because right now I'm not seeing it, right? And maybe they're not important, they being the DNC, Democratic Party leadership, establishment, et cetera. Maybe now, their stamp of approval might be counterproductive for you. But I haven't seen any clue or indication at all that they understand the new populist era we're in. Because the minute Zoran won the primary, to your point, they were all like, hell no, we never meant unity, we're back to totally lying. So the minute we win, we demand complete obedience, but you win, none of us are gonna support you. So to me, when I see that, I go, okay, they haven't learned a single thing. Am I missing it? Is that just an exception? And there's a separate clue out there that leads us to believe that they get it? Because right now it doesn't look like they've learned anything.
I mean, I think this situation in New York right now is a little complicated. I've called it when you grab a tangle of cords and you're trying to unwind everything. I think that's what's happening right now. So I think they're meeting, they're talking, they're figuring stuff out. Kathy Hochul, the governor, endorsed Zoran. So I think you'll see it get better over time. But again, to my first point is, if you're gonna expect the left to rally when the left candidate loses, which I think is the right thing, and I have personally done and encouraged people to do over the years, up to and including when Bernie lost for Hillary, I got behind Hillary with everything that I had. You've got to do that when you lose too. And otherwise you lose your high ground on that, and it's wrong. And the truth is, Zoran Mamdani can win in New York City in the exact conditions that it happened, when there's a lot of specific things, but he couldn't win in my hometown of Omaha, Nebraska. He would not be able to get elected there. So you need a different kind of Democrat to get elected there, and that's fine.
Yeah, of course, there's different candidates for different races all across the country. Yeah. Somebody with my thoughts on gun control is not gonna win in the middle of Kansas or Montana. It's just not gonna happen, right? Especially if they emphasize that and they run on that, right? So you gotta let people run their own races. Totally agree, but unfortunately leadership does not. Okay, everybody check out Endless Urgency, and you kind of should have Endless Urgency. So the times require it. So Mike Nellis, thanks for joining us. Great conversation. Look forward to doing it again.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
No problem. All right, guys, we'll see you tomorrow.